Okay, with the hour being 7:04, we are down a chairman only briefly, so I'm going to open the meeting and go through some of the quick things, and then we will respectfully wait for the chairman to get here before we do anything that requires a vote or any major discussion. So the first thing I want to do is just approve the minutes of December 6th. I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of December 6, 2018. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Discussion?
Discussion?
Did you make, okay, changes were made.
Changes were made? So we're good?
Yeah, I'm good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? To wait for 7:15. Do we have to wait for 7:15 if they're continuing?
You do.
Okay.
But maybe Joe wants to talk about the
Joe,
zoning articles.
do you want to talk about your zoning articles without Jack's opinion, or do you want to hold off?
Well, I could just mention what they are, and then we can discuss them next week too as well, if anybody else has anything that they want to submit. But basically, there are 5 articles. And the first one is the Mullen Rule to accept, for town meeting to potentially accept so that the planning board can qualify for the Mullen Rule. And we need an article because the last time this was done was this fall annual town meeting in 2014 under Article 21, and the Mullen Rule was approved for the ZBA and the Concom, and the planning board was not a party to that at that time. So we discussed the Mullen Rule before. You missed one meeting, and you can make it up either by reading the minutes or watching the tape, and then you certify that you have done so, and you're able to participate and vote in that hearing at subsequent meetings.
Are we absolutely sure, Joe, that the vote that was taken in 2014 was very specific to those 2 boards, or were those 2 boards mentioned, but it might apply to any committee or board in town?
No, it's the main motion of the Finance Committee that was moved and seconded and voted by town meeting was that the town will vote to accept Mass General Laws, Chapter 39, Section 23D, for the Conservation Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals, which section provides that a member of a multiple-member body holding an adjudicatory hearing shall not be disqualified from voting in the matter solely due to the member's absence from one session of such hearing, provided that certain conditions as established by said statute are met. And it was a majority vote required, and that was so voted. And it's on page 54 of the 2014 town report, the main motion of the Finance Committee. So it was.
Do you think it was just an oversight that they didn't include the other boards, or do you think there was a specific reason why they only chose those 2?
I think it was a specific reason. I think members of the planning board at that time did not want the Mullen Rule applied to their board.
Oh, so you feel like the planning board may have
Passed on it.
Passed on it?
Right.
Okay, all right.
When I asked, I was told it was an opt-in.
Gotcha.
The boards who wanted to opt in.
And only 2 boards at that time opted in?
Well, I think they're the basic ones that have the adjudicatory hearing qualification.
Just to be clear on the Mullen Rule has no impact on attending a discussion at a meeting off-site, like being on the phone. Because I've seen Ann Ragosta at the selectmen's meetings have discussion input on hot topic items on a speakerphone when she was not present for the meeting. Is that covered under the Mullen Rule, or is that something different?
Something different.
Is there a rule applied to that, or is that a board decision?
I think the town has to accept a remote participation policy.
Yeah. And I don't know if that, I don't think that applies to us.
But they're not the same thing. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was clear.
And it's specifically limited to 1 meeting, right?
Yep, 1 meeting only.
So if you miss 2 meetings, you're out.
You're disqualified.
And you have to certify that you did go back and watch the video?
Yeah, there's a
or-
form that the
I
member
have a
would fill
form
out
if
and
you wanna
sign.
look at it.
So
A
if you're a
sample
member
form.
and you choose not to, you can do that too. It's not.
You don't have to.
There's an
yeah.
issue.
Minutes don't
count.
Minutes
Has to be
don't-
taped.
Has to be a tape.
Yeah.
Oh, you have to watch it, you can't read the minutes? Cause your article, the way it's worded here, it says you can either, does it say you can read the minutes and/or?
No, it doesn't, the article doesn't say that.
Under the law, you need a transcript, which is what we're doing here.
So a transcript as opposed to just, no, the minutes which are just an overview?
Yeah.
All right.
And it's up to you, as a board member, whether or not you want to invoke the Mullen Rule. You don't have to invoke it. If you missed a meeting and you came back and you decide you don't want to invoke it, you don't have to.
So what are the impacts if someone misses a meeting, wouldn't mind having a split board, so they just decide not to invoke the rule and just
They can do
recuse
that.
themselves? They can do that?
Well, it's up, I guess, to the applicant to decide whether or not they want to continue with the hearing. In the absence of one member, they're entitled to a full board. And if that member comes back and decides not to participate or not to invoke the Mullen Rule, then, that the same thing applies, so.
You can always abstain.
Right. It mostly
want.
comes into play when you have supermajority requirements.
Okay.
Because if it's a project where the applicant thinks that extra vote will make a difference in terms of how many, positive votes they need, they'll want to get
Yeah,
all the
and you
votes
don't
they
wanna
can.
ever run the risk of a split
Yeah,
board either,
exactly.
You missed the meeting.
Good. All right.
Welcome, Mr. Chairman.
Seems like work getting in the way once in a while.
So right in the middle of Joe just discussing some of his articles, proposed articles.
Continue?
Sure.
Articles 2 and 3 are basically the same, and the purpose of those two articles are to require that the 10-acre AQV and the 15-acre AQV include a clubhouse, meeting house, community center where the owners of the dwelling units and invited guests may gather for entertainment, group activities, public information, recreation, social support, and other purposes. And that sort of came more to light during the discussion of the Pulte project, where Pulte has other AQVs all around Massachusetts, and a lot of them have clubhouses. So we had discussions, and the discussion was lengthy about trails. And, there's no place in some of these AQVs for the population to, meet and have social activities. So if they have them in other places, I don't see why they can't have them in Walpole, so.
Wouldn't that be something that we might wanna suggest as opposed to mandate through town meeting?
Well, we suggested it. I suggested it. Sarah suggested trails. She got her trails, I think, because
Kind of.
a lot of you dug in your heels on trails. A lot of you did. The clubhouse, I thought maybe that they would have tried to remodel the Allen House. Is it the
Yeah,
Allen
Allen
House
House.
next door? But that was in such disarray that they could not do it, so there was no, I guess they indicated there was no opportunity for them to do so. The upside for the town is clubhouses are categorized as commercial space. You get a higher tax rate. The downside is for the potential homeowners of the association, because they would have to pay maybe a higher HOA fee to have the clubhouse. So there's an upside, downside to this. Some places have clubhouses when the qualifying age of an AQV is 62. They feel that, it's an opportunity for people to stay on campus, so to speak. So But I think that having the space available is a plus for the AQV, and it's a plus for Walpole as well, because the whole purpose of an AQV is so that it doesn't become a burden on the town, so to speak, to supply that type of amenity. They pay for their own snow removal, their own grass cutting, their own landscaping, their own rubbish removal, recycling. They pay for everything themselves. And so this is an opportunity for them to have their own clubhouse as well.
Don't you think, though, it adds to the development? And what I mean by that is it's sort of the purchaser's choice, in that if you want more, you might be charged more and pay more if it's an AQV that has more amenities versus one that's more basic. Do you know what I mean? And then if you look at like Pulte, they would have had to change things a lot to put a standalone. So what if you were gonna do it, what if you allowed, like, you changed the community center to maybe they'd have like a big area in one of the buildings, a room, instead of just a standalone clubhouse. I think the wording, and I could be misinterpreting it, but I look at it as it's a separate area. Whereas in some of them, depending on how they're made up, like if we look at Pulte versus Renmar's all standalone buildings, so that's a
Right.
different situation, whereas Pulte was the big buildings.
You could have, under this, you could have a clubhouse within the building or the buildings, on the large AQV. You could have it on the first floor if you wanted to. There are AQVs in Massachusetts, one of which I know in Norton, that has, in a common area, they have all their mailboxes. So it's not like they have to stand outside to collect their mail, or if they're
Right.
away.
And that's sort of what I mean.
Right.
But maybe we somehow word that 3-word, the clubhouse, meeting house, community center. Maybe it's just me, and maybe we'd look at it different from a legal aspect, but when I hear that, I think of a separate place. Whereas if it's gonna be an area within the building, I don't know what we'd call it, a
Almost like a common area.
meeting room
Well, I
or
could
common
I
area.
can change that to
Something minor like
something
that.
where it says the site shall include a separate or connected center where the owners of the dwelling units and invited guests.
Because I think if you look at Pulte, they could have easily done that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
that's
they-
fine.
But standalone might have been an issue.
I have no problem with that. I just want them to have that amenity.
My question is, what's the benefit to the town?
Well, the benefit of the town is, number one, that type of space is categorized as commercial space. It's taxed at the higher rate. The town
So
automatically
is
gets.
it based on square footage?
It would probably be based on the square footage. We have a dual tax rate, it would be based on the higher commercial rate. The other
So
advantage.
if they have a community room that's 500 square feet, so
Right.
500 square feet of their project is taxed at a
That's
different.
my understanding. The other amenity, or the other advantage to the town is that if the homeowners association needed to have a meeting and didn't have a common space, then they would put, they would want to use library space or whatever space is available in order to have their meeting. And, space is limited. You can't have space for everyone.
On Tuesday night, come here tonight, lights are off. Come here Friday night, you'd be arrested
And I'm
for
sure if
breaking and
everything's,
entering.
I'm sure if everything's full, the folks at the Italian American Club would love to host them. So, there's give and
For a
take both
fee.
ways. You guys have known me long enough. I am very much anti-regulation for the sake of regulation. And I certainly agree with the spirit behind it. I'm just conflicted with making it a bylaw that if you want to build an AQV in Walpole, you must have this, area built into your marketing plan just because we think it's better for you. So that's where I struggle with it. I don't like when a town tries to tell somebody else how to run their business. When
Well, I
it's,
think-
when it's not a safety issue or, you know, or that type of thing.
Pulte has it up in Riverside Woods in Andover. Clubhouse is required. That's a 62-plus community. And they also have it at Martin's Landing, which is in North Reading, and that's a 55-plus community.
Yeah, but are
And
these,
in both situations, they advertise low monthly HOA fees.
sure, but my question, I'm not arguing the benefits of that. My curiosity lies only in, did the town bylaw force them to build those, or did they build it as part of the amenities to help them sell units, you know, as a part of their marketing plan? You know, here are the amenities we offer. It would surprise me, although, you know, it may very well be true, if that was a bylaw to have that. Because then where does that end? You know, you must have beautiful balconies overlooking the pond if your condo is within 500 feet of a pond. I'm being a little bit flippant, but you know where I'm going with it. It's more of an amenity, and I struggle with any regulation that would try to force that. But that's just my opinion.
Well, you're talking, some of these AQVs could be quite large.
Sure. I mean, like, for instance, over at Swan Pond, they have a wonderful clubhouse where they actually rent that space, so it's an income source for them.
They could do the same here.
Sure. And I think it's a great idea, it's a great marketing idea, but should it be a bylaw? That's my struggle.
Right, and in Article 4 and 5,
Oh, before you go. 2 and 3?
we did 2 and 3.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say now.
Oh,
Whether you're for or against it, the problem is you have right now from a technical viewpoint is your idea of a clubhouse, and I'm the builder, my
Yeah,
idea. My
exactly.
clubhouse is 2 foot by 2 foot.
Exactly.
well,
You have to,
There's no size requirement in
no
there.
size, what
I
it
didn't
is.
wanna
They
get
can
part
make
of
a
the lobby with
conference
a
room and
couch
say,
and a
there you
TV.
go, there's our
I
meeting
didn't
space.
I didn't wanna get into that, because then I could have, I thought it would open up a can of worms in terms of, you know, how is this being calculated? You know,
Exactly.
is everyone
Well, your
being
article
given
opens
10
up a can
square
of worms.
feet, per person in the area? I just
The only problem with
felt
that is, when you sit here doing it, he says, well, what do you think? I don't know, what do you think? And that's the thing. You gotta, when you put bylaws in, everything is 40,000, boom.
Yeah,
You know, everything has to be, so
Exactly.
they either meet it or they don't, and this is too much. Once you put
Wishy-washy.
something in there, Joe,
Yeah.
that says what you think.
And also, is a private area just for residents, would that be considered commercial space versus just part of it as an amenity? Like, if there was a big community room in each of Pulte's buildings up here at Walpole Woodworkers, that, you know, like a lounge area, would that be commercial space, or would it just be community space in their building?
I'll have to ask the assessor.
Not necessarily, I don't think. If it's just an area with couches and TVs.
Right.
Yeah, I'd have to ask the assessor on that.
so where did you get the information that it's gonna be taxed at a higher rate?
I had a discussion with Jim Johnson, and he was in agreement with that, but I think, at least I think he was, but I'll talk to Dennis about that, Dennis Fliss.
All right, you want 4 and 5?
4 and 5 is basically trying to get we're becoming a center for AQVs. I think we have more AQVs in Walpole than our surrounding neighbors. And I can't put my finger on the reason why we have become the capital of AQVs, but
Because we don't have to have clubhouses.
as we
We're gonna
become
put an end to that.
AQVs, it's affecting the numerator and denominator of our affordable units. And that seems to be, and they affect them greatly because they're larger units. So what this does is require AQVs to have 10% affordable, both in the large AQV and the small AQV. And in the large AQV, I left the bonus in, which is if you get at least 15% affordable, then you get the density bonus. So that was the purpose of those two articles.
So right now, there's no requirement?
None.
Wouldn't you rather incentivize people to do that as opposed to require it?
I don't think so, and the reason I say that is, if you look at the two apartment developments that just are going in downtown, if we had something in the regulation that said a small portion, it would have helped us with the housing plan. And not that you want the majority of it to be, but if you had a small percentage, I think it would help things. And I think Joe's on the right track with that, with the AQVs. And if you look at the number of elders who are struggling, and the reason they move out of their home they've been in for so many years is because of the expenses, maybe that would help someone like that to stay in town, still own their own property, be it a condo, and it would give them an opportunity because they qualify under the, under the income. So I think he's on the right track with those, but that's just my opinion.
And in towns where they have the option to either build affordable units or have the developer contribute monetarily to a housing trust, they'll pay the housing trust and build a market rate unit anytime. So I think when it comes to affordable units, it's more effective to require it than it is to give options.
We're at 7% now, I think.
7.21.
But
Briefly.
But
Yeah.
briefly, right.
For now.
A recalculation will take us down.
Going up or down?
No,
Down.
they still didn't count in,
Significantly.
Moose Hill.
Right.
Back to
That's
Yeah.
what I read in the report, but aside from that, I think it's.
But when Pulte comes online, when the two apartments come online, this percentage is going to decrease.
But the thing is, if you wanna build an AQV, here's part of the deal. You want 10%, you get to build, so.
And I'm not, it's a Massachusetts state law, and I don't think the state gives anybody any incentives to build these. They're not giving the towns any incentives to build them.
To build
And-
what, AQV or affordable housing?
Affordable housing.
They do.
What are they?
But there's different programs, like local initiative program, different, if you want to do an
They give them
overlay.
money?
Yeah,
Yeah, but the money they give, we're still under, to me, you're coming in, you're building this big thing. You wanna do it here, do 10%.
Yep.
yeah,
Agree with that.
okay.
I mean, if that's the goal, how can you argue with that? If you're the developer, say, this is what the goal is, you wanna, come on, and go for it.
So I have comments. So the first one, the Mullen Rule, I'm generally in favor of it. I want to look up I didn't look it up prior to this meeting, make sure that the language is good and everything, but I'm in favor of it. The bylaw ones, for the same reason, I've been against bylaw changes. I think it has to be clear and concise. I think it has to definitively solve an existing problem, and I think the effects of the bylaw change have to be well known and have been studied. So, for that reason, I don't think any of these proposed articles fit that. And the other thing is, right now, the town, there's an appetite, political will, and actually some money to do a review of our bylaws where we can look at the entire thing, and if we're concerned about affordable housing, and I am concerned about it, and we want to make changes, let's really study it and not just throw some affordable housing into AQVs, but really make the changes in the bylaw, which is going to benefit all of Walpole, all kinds of housing.
Why don't you put it in now, and then you can change it later to go with everything else? Right now, you have an OPP.
Why? When
Why?
we have the will and we have the money to do a smart study of it.
Okay, someone could walk in tomorrow and put 300 AQVs up, and we get nothing on that.
Yeah,
The process to do what you're talking about isn't gonna happen overnight. It's probably at least a
I know
year
it's not
away.
gonna happen
So my point
overnight,
is, you
but
put
at
this
least it
in
will
now.
happen in a good way.
Well, yeah, you're trying to do something, Joe's trying to do something, I agree, is the 10%, so why not put it in now? It doesn't hurt you. It actually will help you if something does come up.
It could hurt you, yeah.
How would it
Like
hurt
this
you?
clubhouse thing, like you
I didn't
said,
say
like.
clubhouse, I'm talking 10%.
Okay, but okay, what are the effects of doing this? Has it been studied? Do we need to change other parts of the bylaw because of this? Like, I mean, I just,
This is stopgap, I will admit it's
Well,
stopgap.
everything
but-
is,
But
but-
when you see a hole in the dam, you plug it. You don't stand back and say, oh, let's do a study of the entire dam.
But are you really gonna plug
You could do the study of
it?
the entire dam,
Well-
but I'm more interested in plugging the hole before it continues to leak.
The state's the one that just shut out 10%. Nice number. They're the ones who just threw it out. So we're trying to react to it. I don't see what's wrong with that. And if it gets changed later on, that's fine. But at least you've got something in place.
but I mean, there's many things we can do. I mean, you look at like Newton, right? So they've done things to increase their affordable housing, right? This fee in lieu of, that's one thing that they did. We don't even have a housing trust, so we can't even do that.
Right.
Another one that they put in their bylaw is they regulated the square footage rather than the, number of units. So that a developer, if they wanted, could do like a development with, some single family, some condos and whatever. And so then they've got like 10% of the square footage of the affordable housing. And that's, a way to incentivize affordable housing while also being, considerate of developers' bottom line. And, I mean, there's just many things that we should study and implement and do, but I just don't like anybody on their own just putting together a bylaw and then town meeting votes on it and then we implement it and nobody has really studied what's gonna happen.
Quite understand this is how everything developed, but forget that. So you're against the 3, 4, and 5, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So you said you've seen this?
Well, I've seen towns that have the payment in lieu of developing the units, and 99% of the time, the developer will pay the money to the housing trust because it comes out to be peanuts compared to the money they lose with their
I would have written
renting
such a
affordable user.
bylaw, but we don't have a trust.
Right.
And that's something for the selectmen to do.
Now, that's something that I know the housing production plans can suggest, and I'm not disagreeing with that practice. It's just in a case like this, I don't.
You get more out of it.
You get more out of it, and I don't see the ripple effect it would have on other parts of the bylaw just for AQVs requiring them the 10% because I don't know what other bylaws it would affect because we're talking about AQVs.
Not to get way off, but I just wanted, do you know of anybody who is taking money and build stuff?
Well, that's the other thing that's the other issue that towns face with taking money in, especially if you don't have a housing trust is, okay, you gotta find land, then you gotta actually have to build the units. Now the town is in the construction business, and then you have to have a mechanism to monitor those units, get them on the SHI, and then make sure they stay on the SHI. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but it's a more involved process.
But the money, what are they kicking in?
It depends. It depends
I mean,
on
how
the
do they
town.
value it? The final price or what it costs to build it? There's all sorts of things.
Right, it differs.
And the actual affordable units, how long do they need to stay affordable? That's not spelled out.
Well, that would be if a project were to come before the planning board, for instance, that could be stipulated in the conditions that it's in perpetuity.
We've got 5 AQVs and probably close to 500 units in all of them, including the ones before us too, proposed. So 50 have been lost.
Right, I mean, I'm in favor of the concept, definitely, and especially, the people that, one population that needs affordable housing is seniors, and definitely, so we as a town should be, helping make that possible, but I just don't know that this bylaw is
And the AQVs
fixed
that are
it.
being built in towns where there's large tracts of land are all luxury AQVs. Toll Brothers has one in Millis, very luxurious, and there's one proposed for Plainville. the number that I heard was like close to 400 units around a golf course. And I think there's one possibly going for rental.
Yeah, there is one as a senior living community near Serenity Hill. And Sarah, you're right, this is not going to fix. I don't think, it doesn't seem to me that that's the purpose to fix. I mean, that's why we're having a housing production plan for more diverse and more comprehensive changes. I think the attempt here is to use, you know, to use an example, is to just stop the bleeding a little bit and just kind of allow us to not fall so far behind where we're at 7.2, then all of a sudden in a couple of years we're at 5.8, and now we have to make up that 1.4 just to get back to where we were. So is this gonna fix things? No, it's not gonna fix things, but at least it allows us not to, you know, fall farther behind than we have to in terms of keeping up with the 10%.
Yeah, I just would rather go before town meeting with a bylaw that has been thoroughly reviewed and say we're gonna add inclusionary zoning to this section, and this section, and we've studied it, and I mean, why are we picking on AQV? Like, we want affordable housing everywhere. So.
I think you have to wait for this is easy, okay? Putting aside the AQVs and doing it for the AQVs is easy. Trying to do it for everything else, that's
Yeah.
gonna be a
That's
little
gonna be
bit of a
battle,
problem.
because now
About
you're talking
AQV
about all
rental,
zoning
that's
districts.
also sorely needed. AQV rental.
Well, that's what it says here, it doesn't say buyers,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I know, but I mean, if you actually think of the population, you know, maybe rental is better for them than buying. I mean, maybe
But
some people,
it
but.
doesn't define whether it's a purchase.
I know, but that's what, so
Well, what we,
then we'd get more condos with a small fraction of affordable, and have we actually done anything?
Well, actually, rentals are beneficial for 40B2 because
Of
100%
course.
of the units
Yeah,
count towards our
right, so
SHI.
I would rather encourage rental than,
All this says is the units must be subject to a permanent deed restriction to ensure that they remain in the town's affordable housing stock and must be sold or rented on a fair and open basis with priority given to qualified residents.
right. No, I know, but, if we're in the business of encouraging certain developments, I mean, I don't know,
all right, well,
I said my piece.
all it is, we're here to, whether we wanna put them on or not, all right? First one, all those in favor to put it on, doesn't mean we're voting for it, just means we're gonna put it on. So all those in favor,
So you're making a motion?
So
Yeah.
Make a motion to,
put them on, not to approve, not anything, we gotta.
You don't wanna
Just
send
to
them
vote
to
on?
town council at all to,
Nope, just for the planning board to vote on it.
No, we're not voting, all we are is voting to put it on, whether you wanna put it on the warrant or not.
Oh, okay.
Whatever, whether you like it or not, it's just a matter, if you don't wanna go forward, you say no, but if you let it
are
fly.
these worded the way you wanted?
no,
want
what
them, or are
happens
these-
is, once we vote to say we want these articles on, town council will review them and reword them appropriately.
Well, that would be the first one, cause that's the legal one. So the first one, all those in favor of
I need a second, Jim.
moving forward, that's what I'm, just,
All those in favor, you said. Second.
okay?
We're voting these one at a time?
Yeah, might as well.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor, moving this one forward, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, all right. Number 2 and 3, since they're tied at the hip. Make a motion to launch these forward, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion, so all those in favor of launching them forward, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed,
Opposed?
Opposed.
all those voting abstain, only because of the,
I'm abstaining only because of the language, yeah.
well, I'm abstaining because we don't have a square footage, that's all.
1, 2, 2?
Yeah, yeah, I'm not killing it, I'm just, yep. All right, 4 and 5, make a motion to move those forward.
Second.
Second, any discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, so that's 3-2, okay. So, those will go to, 4 and 5 will go to council, 1, and that's it. All right, moving on. Titanium. The hour being after 7:15, we have a site plan approval case 1815 for 2285 Providence Highway. And we have from the attorneys that dated January 2nd. Please accept this correspondence, a formal request to continue board's hearing for January 3rd until February 21st. This request would delay the opening of the public hearing for the applicant's application. The applicant hereby agrees that all deadlines imposed for the commencement of the public hearing is extended until March 31st. So anybody here for the titanium, which is the old Hess, they're not going forward tonight. So first item, I'll make a motion to extend it up through March 31st.
Second.
A second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and since I guess he must have went on Expedia to get his date, huh? On the 21st? Are we on Expedia or something like that? You can just Google.
Expedia?
Yeah, just like,
Are we at travel?
yes, that's what I'm saying. He already picked it. He just goes in, I want the 21st.
At 7:30.
Do we have my point, Katie?
Have a meeting?
I just love pushy lawyers. What, do we have anything that night? Okay, so that's the first one. Okay. So we'll continue this public hearing on 7:30 on the 21st of February. All right. Takes care of that. Okay.
Let's see.
Before we jump into the other one. High Oaks, because I see.
High Oaks.
Yeah, because I see Jack Walsh in the audience. Oh, wait a minute. Ooh. Jeez, Johnny, where you been?
Expedia. All right, the first one, Jack, is an extension request, and the second one is Maggie's letter to reduce her recommendation.
All right. I'm sorry, I can't. I'll read what it says. John, come on up the front. Come on, you'll be on TV. This is from Greg Walsh. Walsh Contracting will grant the town of Walpole Planning Board a time extension for its bond through June 1st. Thanks. Gee, I'm glad, we can have it from you. Actually, we're gonna go through June 1st?
Yes.
Okay. In reality, what you're saying is your bonding company's all set through June 1st. You're all set with your bond.
You gotta reduce it, aren't you?
First things first. We gotta extend it first, because you're well over. Not the smiling guy, I remember. All right, I'll make a motion to allow them to complete their work up through June 1st, 2019. This is for High Oaks extension.
Second.
Second, any discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. All right, we have the bond being reduced. All right. Do you know how much? Oh, God. All right, we have for Maggie, the bond will be reduced by $556,000 and change, so the balance remaining is $214,224. So I'll make a motion to reduce the bond to $200,224.
Second.
Second, any further discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks.
That's it? Should've called you Tommy. All right. Let's see, next one. We have a 720 continued, no, actually it's new, I'm sorry. Highland Development Ventures, Fox Hill and Providence Highway, case 1817, site plan approval, and 1818 for 2 special permits.
Does anybody need a plan? I have a small plan.
Yeah, I'll take it. Came right from work.
Maybe Joe.
All right.
That's yours?
No. Okay, with the hour being after 7:20, we'll have a site plan application 1817 and 1818 for a special permit from Highland Development Ventures, corner Columbus Ave, south by Hyla. You don't know how to pronounce it. You sure? Yeah, see, I knew you didn't know it either, Tom. For the corner of Fox Hill Drive and Providence Highway, Route 1, Assessors Map 53, Parcel 34. The applicant seeking site plan review under Section 13 of the zoning bylaws to construct a 3-story self-storage facility with a special permit pursuant to Section 12(3)(C4), as the impervious lot coverage will be 25.2%, where 15% is allowed, and an aquifer area 3, and a special permit, Section 12(3)(C7), as there will be removal soil, loam, and sand, and any other mineral substance within 4 feet of the historic high groundwater. And let's see, by Bowler Engineering, Southborough, Mass. And with that being said, we're open. And I know you've been here before, but for anybody here, we'll allow the applicant to show us his project. After that, I'll read any of the comments from any of the boards that have come in, or anybody that sent us comments, and then the board will speak, and anybody in the audience has any questions that ask you hold the end, we'll let you speak at that time. So with that being said, Tom?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Conroy. My name is Tom Brady. I'm representing Highland Development Ventures, LLC. With me as a principal of Highland Development Ventures, LLC, is Mr. Adam Hurd. And the engineers on the project are Bowler Engineering, and Mr. James Bernardino is the engineer for the project. The applicant is proposing to construct a 3-story Class A self-storage facility that'll be attractive and noticeable along the heavy traffic artery of Providence Highway Route 1. And here's a picture, a depiction of the building they wish to construct. The facility will include a fully climate-controlled drive-in interior loading area, exterior loading area, electronic access control, security cameras, and monitoring, motion sensor lighting, and a comprehensive sprinkler system. The development is on a 2.97 acre site, approximately 121,000 square feet, with 88,000 of rentable square feet, and approximately 800 to 850 storage units. So we were before the conservation back in December, and we got our order of conditions and our stormwater management permit. That's been granted to us. Last night, we were before the Zoning Board of Appeals to get relief from parking. The required parking for this size facility would be 121, but we only need 16. They were very favorable to us tonight, but they wanted to continue the hearing and keep it open so we can get the comments from your board, and if we have to tweak anything with them, we can do so. And so we're back on their agenda January 16th. Other than your board, we have to go to the Board of Selectmen January 22nd. There's a moratorium on Fox Hill Drive for opening it because it's been recently paved. So we have to get the permission from the Board of Selectmen to do that, to put our utilities in. But tonight, we're before you for a site plan approval for this building. And we will need 2 special permits, again pursuant to 12(3)(C4), as the impervious coverage will be 45.2%. And this, if it wasn't in Area 3, we'd be all set, but it isn't in Area 3, so it's only 15% allowed. So we have to get a special permit from your board for that, and also a special permit to remove soil, loam, sand, and gravel within 4 feet of the historical high groundwater table elevation. So I'm just going to let you talk to Mr. Bernardino. You can come up and speak.
Thank you. For the record, Jim Bernardino with Bowler Engineering. As discussed, I'd like to show you a representation of the site plan. This is a rendered site plan. Obviously, we are located on the northeast corner of Route 1 and Fox Hill Drive. The site is currently undeveloped, scrub brush meadow area. So the proposal is to construct this proposed building slightly over 40,000 square foot in footprint, but we're a little over 120,000 square foot in gross floor area, as we have 3 stories. As you mentioned, we do have a facility that will be self-storage with 3 dedicated loading areas. We have 2 loading areas located at this location of the building, which are covered. We could drive in and have weather-protected loading and unloading for customers. Along the top portion of the building, this is actually access to the 2nd story on here. Due to the topographic changes, we're trying to trying to construct the building in consideration with the topography, so we're kind of building it into the slope. So along the rear of the building, we do have access to the 2nd floor, as well as some exterior units that can be accessed from the parking and loading area on the side. Those are the typical units that you generally see with the overhead door styles. We have a number of those, but they're only on the back side of the property, not visible from either street view. With that consideration that there is some exterior access, this rear portion will be surrounded with security fencing, so the customers will only have access with a keypad during the operational hours. It won't be 24-hour access, but it will be during the normal operation hours of the property. As Mr. Brady did mention, we were in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals yesterday for a request for reduced parking. As part of the zoning regulations, they require for warehouse use one parking space per 1,000 square feet. So we would be required to have 121 parking spaces for this project. Obviously, this isn't a high intense use where, such as the warehouse that was considered in the bylaw, where there's ongoing traffic in and out and the like. So this is more what's considered a mini warehouse style. We've done, there's many sample facilities out there. As part of the town review, there's comments both from planning as well as engineering as to provide some supplemental data to support our request for having only 16 spaces as well as the 3 dedicated loading spaces. Last evening, we presented some calculations to the Zoning Board of Appeals based on the ITE parking generation calculations for this specific type of use. Those calculations yielded a peak demand of 15 parking spaces during the highest demand period. Obviously, that's a very conservative calculations based upon the applicant's experience. That requirement is probably, the 16 spaces being provided is probably even double of what they actually need. We've also provided a list to the Zoning Board of Appeals of approximately 6 to 8 sites that are of similar size and use. These multi-story climate-controlled units, all within the radius of the surrounding Boston area, in the range of 80,000 to 120,000 gross floor area, and they all provide approximately 8 to 12 to 15 parking spaces. So I think we demonstrated to the zoning board last night that parking is adequate for the site. They were in agreement with those calculations, and obviously we'll submit some of that documentation as a revision or a revised submittal to the board for their records and town engineer review. Obviously, we're here this evening because of site plan review as well as the special permit for impervious coverage. We are at 45.2% impervious coverage. To mitigate that, we've done a comprehensive stormwater infiltration system for the site. We have 2 areas of infiltration. One at the back right column, this is the traditional open-air detention basin. And then along the front, we have some large underground infiltration chambers. These will provide, the drainage system will provide collection, treatment, and infiltration of the stormwater. With the consideration of this being an aquifer protection, I think the main goal is to replenish the stormwater or the groundwater recharge, and we've done that. Basically, there is 0 runoff from the site. We collect all the stormwater runoff, we treat it, and we put it all back into the ground within the 100-year storm event. So technically, there's no water running off anywhere. So we've done groundwater testing as well as some soil classifications out there to confirm the design assumptions. So we believe that the drainage system addresses the concern of, the additional pervious on the site. Another reason why we're here this evening, obviously, is the removal of soil within 4 feet of the seasonal high groundwater. I have an exhibit that I prepared. I'll hand it out. I apologize for not providing this with the initial submission to the board, but obviously this came forward with, in response to responding or preparation of responding to the town engineer's comments about where are we excavating within 4 feet of the seasonal high groundwater, and what is our intent within that area as well. So I can just, I'll pass this out. I have copies enough for everybody on the board. Thank you. So basically what you're going to see is just a reduced version of this exhibit here on the, that I have mounted. Basically, along the highlighted red area on the back of the building, along the side of the building, that is the location where we will be excavating within 4 feet of the seasonal high groundwater. The finished floor of the building will not be within 4 feet of the seasonal high groundwater. We're requesting this special permit as part of construction. We need to install, obviously, our structural supports, the foundation, and the base that the foundation sits on. That will be within the 4 foot of the seasonal high groundwater. Once that excavation is complete and the foundation is established, obviously we're going to fill back in and have that 4 feet plus greater above the seasonal high groundwater. So there will be a temporary excavation within that limit of 4 feet within of the high groundwater table. We've done, obviously, a number of test pits, so we have a very good idea of what the seasonal and historic high groundwater is. We were out there early fall when we had record rainfall events and the like. So back to the site plan. We have developed a comprehensive site plan package, which includes, in addition to the drainage designs, a full utility package. We will be serviced by gas and public electric. We will have an on-site soil disposal we'll be submitting, if not at the end of this week, probably early next week, to the Board of Health for their final review. That design is shown schematically on our site plan set. Health's review. We've also done a comprehensive landscaping plan with a combination of street trees in the front, some vegetation and screening plantings for to hide the proposed transformers that are on the site as well. We do have a mix of lawn area around the property, manicured lawn area around the perimeter of the property. At the back of the property, we've actually isolated this to provide vandals and unwanted persons to go to the back. So we have that area fenced off. So we're providing or proposing a meadow mix, something that's not needed to be manicured and maintained. It will be maintained probably on a biannual basis, but the specifications for that type of seed mix is indicative of letting it grow and being established as a meadow. Likewise, we do have some additional mix along the side slopes of the detention basins, which are more suitable for steep and wet conditions, and we do stabilize the bottom of the detention basin with some crushed stone. Again, we have a comprehensive lighting plan. We've also developed an extensive erosion and sediment control plan that was also reviewed by the Conservation Commission. Mr. Brady did mention that we have received an order of conditions as well as a land disturbance permit from the Conservation Commission. So we've addressed a lot of the land disturbance and erosion control items through that process. And lastly, we've also developed a comprehensive set of construction details that would allow contractors, obviously, to build and move forward with the construction of the property. just to touch base on a couple of the items that we've received from staff. We've received comments from the engineering department. There was nothing of substance that we could not overcome with the revised set of plans. Some of the comments were technical in nature, looking for additional details, so we'll take no issue with addressing any of the town engineer's comments. I think I touched base on two of the comments that I think are relatively important to discuss. One, which was the groundwater aspect, where we actually excavating within 4 feet. That was a comment from Maggie to demonstrate, to explain where those areas are, and as well as to substantiate the need for, or the necessity to reduce the parking spaces from 121 that's required down to the 16 that's proposed. One other item as well that we just received a comment letter from the fire department yesterday, and I think obviously the planning board, your board, will be very interested in just to make sure that we do have adequate safety and maneuverability on the site. We prepared an exhibit that we will submit to the board formally, as well as the fire department for review. But we do have adequate access for the specific fire truck that the town of Walpole uses to battle their fires. Access off of Fox Hill Drive. We do have the ability to pull into the site, back out slightly, and circumvent the site, circulate the site. There was a comment about the distance that the dead end was, basically from the pinch point of the gate down to the loading area here. It's approximately 135 feet. So I think we're below that 150 feet, but I would like to review that with the fire department. We have reached out to them to try to set up a meeting, but I do believe we're going to be meeting all their regulations and addressing their concerns. One other concern that the fire department had was the access width of the fire lanes. We do have adequate width, 26 feet plus, all the way around the edge here. We have a pinch point right in this location here, which goes down to about 16.5 feet. That pinch point was done to minimize the gate width. So we'll discuss that with the fire chief. We have the ability to make that a little bit wider, address his concerns to make sure that he'll have appropriate access through that area. So with that, I think those are the hot buttons that I want to present to the planning board. If there's anything else that we could add, or we'll just open it up to the board for Q&A and move forward from there.
The building also does meet all dimensional regulations and all sign regulations. So there's no variances being requested. It's just special permits that we require for the parking and the land removal and the impervious coverage.
All right, read the comments. We have one from Board of Appeals, dated December 13th. And as you said before, the project is scheduled to go before the ZBA on the 2nd. From Conservation Commission, and this is dated December 3rd. At their last meeting, the Conservation voted to issue order conditions. Landis Hershey. From Board of Sewer and Water, Sewer and Water concurs with the town engineer's comments. Additionally, when reviewing the DIS, they know they did not provide an estimate for water demand and should be addressed prior to approval. How many bathrooms?
We have one bathroom, one set of bathrooms. We have 1 to 2 employees that'll be working. We've recently done studies, pulled record plans from various comparable. We're looking at 50 gallons a day. Working with DEP and the Board of Health, we're going to design our septic system for 300 gallons a day, which we think is 6 times bigger than it needs to be. So very low use for water demand, less than a couple hundred gallons a day.
Yeah, that's why I was asking if you had bathrooms, and that's why I saw that.
And just for your record as well, and I believe the water department does have it as well, we coordinated fire flow tests just to make sure that there's adequate flow and pressure to address the sprinkler system that will be designed for this. Those are very favorable. We don't expect any issue with providing the appropriate fire flow for the demands of the building.
Okay. From the police department, from Officer Luke Pallon, The attached plans have been reviewed, and the Walpole Police does not have any safety concerns in relation to traffic in this case. Let's see. From the Board of Health, and I think when I saw this, did you speak to them yet, Kate?
There's no one to talk to.
All right, the problem we got, is it's from nobody, and we gotta get it from somebody. I don't know if you guys read it. It didn't say a vote, it didn't say who, so, you know, I think in the future, we gotta get comments, so you wouldn't even know who to go to talk to, but regardless of that. December 17th, the Health Department had the following comments. Oh, the Health Department. That also could be an issue down the road where Mass law, John, requires Board of Health, correct? Would this wouldn't necessarily meet it, or someone could challenge it, or?
Potentially.
Yeah, okay. No, just in the future, so we make sure.
Says Board of Health on the top.
Yeah, but it says here, the Health Department has the following comments, though.
Yeah, okay.
That
So,
probably meant that Robin prepared that.
Well, then, how about a little,
I know.
Someone could potentially challenge it. I don't know if they'd be successful.
yeah, and everybody says, well, it's on the stationery. You can make this up in about a minute. So, I just wanna make sure, because they are a very important board on any of this stuff. The property have an on-site septic system, which you said. The application notes will be on-site waste containers, which will be removed by private refuse contractor. Plan does not show a designated area for trash recycling. Where there's only a 525 square foot office, which will not generate much trash. But what about the individuals regularly cleaning out their units? They will need to be means of disposal in place to prevent items from being discarded or piling up. They want MSDS sheets on any chemicals, and what's the policy which restricts what is allowed to be even stored in the unit. And for safety reasons, since the facility is open 24 hours, we'd like to see adequate lighting in the parking lot. Okay, couple things that they have here, and it's part of us, really. Do you guys allow them to throw their crap into your dumpster when they leave?
Can I just, I know more about operations.
Yeah.
Could you
So-
come
Yeah,
up
come
here
in,
so you can
yeah.
talk
And then
into
you
the
can look
mic?
at yourself
Thank
on
you.
cable tomorrow.
Oh.
Adam Hurd with Highland Development Ventures. The tenants, you know, we're typically a short-term storage. There's no unpacking, so people box their stuff, they bring it in, and then they bring it out. In the, you know, when we do have a tenant who, you know, maybe they've inherited a unit and they need to go through it and dispose of stuff, they work it out with management. And through the carting company would get a portable unit that they can bring in down the hallway and they could fill it. We generate very little waste, so because of that, management prefers we just have a small container that we keep in the unit, and they bring it out when the trash pickup people come. And for this site, it works well because we have the wetlands, so we're better off not having a dumpster outside anyway.
Okay, next question, because it's rolling along here. They're looking for the MSDS and all that type of stuff, and the question, I guess I'll throw it back at John, is typically what we're done with Walpole Park South, I know you were involved in that, would this be under the same special permit in section 12?
I believe so, but I have to look into that.
Okay. You familiar with that, Tom?
Yeah, the list of chemicals, we talked about that, you can talk to it.
We don't permit any hazardous chemicals on the property for storage. You know, a household garage would have much more toxic stuff than we permit. For starters, this is an indoor facility, so anything that's in there would give off owners and would alert the staff that something's going on.
The issue is that in household quantities, I'm familiar, Walpole Park South, just down the street from you guys, because they're renting to different people, they made a list of everything they were gonna put in there. It could go in there, so if they have a tenant, and he wants to put in, you know, benzene or something, it's already been approved and it's already there. And they did that because when you're renting to people, you can't wait for a special permit for, you know, a couple months. I guess the point I'm gonna say is, you people have a list of what, the only things you can store, or what you can't store. Either way, we're gonna need that.
The lease specifically says no hazardous
chemicals or substances.
Well, we can provide you with a list of chemicals that will not be stored there, right? I guess.
Well,
Well, that would be a,
Well, what do you, well, for Walpole Park South, what is Janelle, he just, I mean,
take a look at what he had, Tom.
yeah.
Because, I mean, even with copy machines, that it gets kind of stupid on some of that stuff, you know. If it's the size of this, who cares, but if they're storing boxes of it. So it's just, what I've always told people who do this, just look at what they've done, and he'll probably want a cut of everything you saved for doing it, but that's what he did, and there are certain, and it's only household quantities, but you never know what you're gonna get, and what's considered hazardous, what isn't. And so we need, because you are in the aquifer, and you're doing that special, you want a reduction of it, it's all under that one.
Jack, it does say a complete list of all application comments, a complete list of all chemicals, pesticides, fuels, and other potentially toxic or hazardous materials to be used or stored on the premises in amounts greater than normal household quantities.
Okay.
okay, this is, I'm reading from the Extra Space lease, which is their standard lease for every facility in the state of Massachusetts. In bold print, they put in, sorry, I can't. Customer shall not store or use in the space or at the facility any hazardous or toxic materials or any inherently dangerous or flammable substances. So it's basically a blanket statement. We don't permit any hazardous materials at the property. Also perishable, we don't want food in the facility because it'll attract rodents.
Okay, well,
Can we have a copy?
yeah,
of it?
that's, you'd have to submit that to us.
You need, I have a copy here.
Yeah,
you
you
need
do that, and
more?
I'd ask if Tom, just look at what Donnell gets, just in case there might something pop up that someone wouldn't consider.
And didn't it, can I ask you a question? Didn't it say somewhere in there, anything vague?
That's your standard
vague
contract.
in there?
That's the standard lease.
Didn't it say that?
Does it
Yeah.
get more specific than that down the road in that lease? I mean, when you say shall not store toxic materials, so paint? I mean, there's a lot of things that I wouldn't wanna eat that
If
would not be
somebody- if someone
considered
came to the
dangerous.
facility and said they wanted to store cans of paint, they wouldn't be able to.
They would not be able to.
No, if they wanted to store furniture that's been painted, that's okay. The typical tenant is gonna be there for a few months. Half of our tenants stay for 6 months or less. And residential tenants are primarily storing furniture, and business tenants are primarily storing paper.
So you're not necessarily one of those storage facilities that maybe an area sales rep would have his stock there of whatever they sell. You know, take the paint thing, for instance, like no one would be storing samples and things like that. This is more of a,
We do get salespeople, but generally, there might be carpet samples or, all sorts of different product or manuals, so. Obviously, you know something about the business then, but.
well, no, just the toxic was,
But
you know,
we're
toxic's
not-
such a broad statement.
But even then, like, something like paint, like, the Cube Smart over by,
Walmart?
that, they have these long drive-up facilities. They're perfect for contractors who are storing materials, it's in and out, it's ventilated. We're not that, we're, except for 18 units, we're indoor. And we attract a different type of
Sure.
tenant. You're paying extra for climatized storage.
Sure.
So typically, it's, our tenants are worried about mold and, damage to
Humidity,
their
yeah.
belongings, and they're willing to pay extra and have a little more travel distance to their belongings. At the same time, and we pointed that out before, because we know in this location there's a lot of concern about what's stored. We normally use this chemical, it's a water soluble chemical called Rexdane, and we put it underneath where the vehicles pull in. It's actually, to catch oil and stuff, it's actually used in clean rooms and laboratories. It's highly resistant to toxic chemicals, and our plan is for this facility, we're gonna put it across the entire first floor. So anything that comes through, if there is a problem, it won't penetrate the concrete.
Okay, The only thing is, you said something, an office, and if you have toner in massive quantity, that becomes, you know. So my suggestion is, look at what office supplies, that if someone from an office, he wants to bring in a bunch of cartons of toner, that kind of trips things. Whatever your business is, whatever you allow stored, just take a look at the list of the measures to make sure. Yeah. Okay, I don't wanna beat that, but they had that to death because the Board of Health had that on there, and they end up with the MSD-ish sheets for your cleaning products, and you have to, whatever you're gonna use, that's household quantities, that's what you're asking, Kate?
It said somewhere in there that you even had to list what you clean the facility with.
Okay, well, that's easy.
And the last two, first off, we have Maggie's. Maggie?
Most of the comments I had to do with plan revisions, but there were a couple of things that I just wanted to ask them about. Can you go over, because I don't think we mentioned, where you plan to plow snow, or where your designated snow storage areas are?
Yes, obviously, revised set of plans will show dedicated snow storage areas. But what we've done is along the, plan north, was more along the northeast corner, we're going to have a large snow shelf along the edge. We've purposely set the fence back an extra 8-10 feet off the edge of the curb, so we have room to snow storage along in that back area here. Likewise, we do have a large lawn area along this area of the building that snow will be stored as well as some of the snow area in the back over here. Obviously, we do have a light fixture here, maybe not because it's most appropriately located, but we're gonna look at that just to kind of maybe potentially move that to one side or the other, just to facilitate some snow removal. So we do have snow removal on basically two of the primary sides of the building where the pavement is.
And site lighting and signage?
Site lighting, we do have a site lighting as part of the site plan submission. So there will be a combination of some wall packs on the building as well as freestanding lights to illuminate loading areas, drive entrances, and obviously some loading areas in the back. They'll be shielded from the abutting properties. There's no residential uses. They're, commercial uphill of us, so it's very well contained for the lighting. There'll be very limited overspill. As I mentioned, you may see a revised lighting plan coming forth, because obviously we have this one light, but now that we've pinpointed our septic system location-wise, now we know where we can put that light and make it work as well with the septic and snow removal operations. So that was site lighting, and you had another one?
Signage, like directory signs or what have you,
Yeah,
whatever
the
you're
directory
planning.
signage, during construction, we have, we talked about that previously, directing construction vehicles to exit the appropriate spot. So we'll have some temporary signage to direct construction vehicles to exit where we have erosion control measures and the like. On site, we do not have any directional signages per se, but we do have a freestanding sign. Let me put this down here, show you the location. Location will be at the corner of the property. And obviously we'll have a landscape bed at the bottom with some shrubbery and the like to aesthetically enhance the sign itself. We do have a freestanding sign. Let me get the square footages for this one. My eyeballs aren't that good. It's a 95 square foot extra space storage sign, and we are proposing a height of about 15.5 feet to the top of the sign. So that will be, what we consider the freestanding sign as well. And architecturally, we do have, architecturally, we have signage within the building itself. So the directional signs per se will be, there'll be a sign over the office to direct people to where the office, where they can get their leases and speak with actual employees there. And the others will be just extra space storage signs on either side of the building.
And you mentioned the issue with Foxville, but I do have the petition from the selectmen that I have to write up for you, so I know that's been filed.
Yes.
Any luck with getting the gas company on board for one hearing? come in separate?
That'll have to come in separate. We've reached out with the formal request. They've opened up a ticket. We got them some preliminary loads, so it's in the process. And unfortunately, we do apologize for that, not coming in at the same time. But what I did do to address one of your comments was to modify the water line and gas line services to have them a little closer together so we could have a uniform trench rather than speed bumps all the way down with new trench works. So we try to consolidate the impact to Fox Hill Drive.
And I know this, one of the selectmen's concerns was to be able to deal with the gas company and you all at once, but I do know that part of the issue you're probably having is, I think because of the problems they had earlier this fall, elsewhere in the state, they've been extremely restricted as to where they could go with new services until they were released. I don't know if it's by the DPU, but that may be some of the issue. They'll be coming, but just,
Yeah,
that's
and-
probably what's
and
going on.
Just to understand, you know, part of the concern of why we're looking to go to the selectmen earlier is because this is kind of critical, and we believe that the Board of Selectmen will be receptive of the proposal, but obviously, if there's any hiccups or something that we need to do, we like to address that as soon as possible. When we speak with the selectmen, we could definitely talk about working with the gas company, because we do have the flexibility. The only other curb trench opening that we have is the water line. So obviously, depending on what the gas company has, what they require, we have the ability to change our site plan to accommodate that. So obviously, we won't install our water line until we know the gas company's on board. So we could move that trench line to wherever, you know, your department ultimately determines, and where the gas company would like to see it as well. So I think that is definitely solutions out there that can be worked, you know, between the town, the applicant, as well as the gas company.
And that's it.
That's it. Maggie, one quick question. I was under the impression of the 4 foot above groundwater. I thought if you're gonna cut it and leave it. I didn't think if you're digging, who cares? You're backfilling anyway.
You mean as far as with the 4 foot within
Yeah.
seasonal high ground? Well, there is something about, in that bylaw about backfilling it and not having it less than 4 feet for more than 45 days.
You have to redeposit.
Yeah, I agree with, I think there's some
There
room
is-
for
there is that,
interpretation
yeah.
there, and I agree with your interpretation. It's, hey, we're stripping it down, we're gonna leave it within 4 feet of the seasonal high. But, you know, if you wanna nitpick, what we believed was, well, just a belt and suspenders, let's talk about this issue, so later on, it won't become an issue. And that's why I think Maggie had a great comment to say, hey, show you where these locations are and what the impacts are. So basically, it is an excavation for the construction and structural support of the building, but then we're gonna be filling it back up.
Okay, so based upon everything through the Concom and through, and they do stormwater management, they're all happy with everything they got for underground?
So far, I don't know if they've closed yet, have they?
They have closed and they have issued an order of
Oh, okay.
conditions.
Then I must just not have gotten a copy of
What
it
we've
yet.
done is, subsequent to filing with the planning board, we revised this set of plans and resubmitted to the Conservation Commission. 95% of your comments that are to the planning board were
Went to them already.
went to them
They did.
already. So I think there was only a couple of new ones that we talked about this evening. So we didn't burden the board with another set of plans again. So we want to get any of your further comments, and hopefully we can incorporate any additional comments that we have, as well as planning staff, which are new comments to us. And then we'll obviously put together a comprehensive resubmission to the board.
All right, so based upon the 15%, they're doing, in theory, they're 0% by recharge.
They're doing all
correct?
the, correct. They're pretty much everything's recharging, whether it's underground directly or in a detention basin.
That's correct. The sites, the soils on the site in the aquifer protection zone, they're just great sandy soils. That's why it's an aquifer protection zone, you know, and so, you know, with that, we just implemented the treatment component of it and infiltrated it back into the ground.
Okay. John?
Thanks. Want to remind the board and point out that they are requesting waivers from having to provide information relative to level of service ratings, average and peak vehicular speeds, and site distance. He's addressed my comment on the signage, although we'll want to see that sheet added to the site plan set before endorsement. Site plans do not contain an existing conditions plan that shows the contours of the site
We
as it
apologize,
stands.
that was inadvertently left out.
Yep, this should be.
We have the information.
This should be provided to the planning board and ZBA for review and be made part of the site plans prior to endorsement by both boards. The applicant should provide information from the Walpole Fire Department confirming that the proposed project provides ample access to the building and that the largest fire department vehicle can safely navigate the site. Now, the cover page of the site plans that I saw indicate a building footprint of 36,733 square feet, while a building footprint of 40,120 is indicated elsewhere on the site plans. Now, also last night at the ZBA, the plans that I saw give a total of 102. You mentioned 121 last night, so, yeah, so hold on, let me get through my comments, but that needs to be addressed and clarified. You've already taken care of the reduction in parking. The zoning analysis table on page 4 should be revised to state that the property is within Area 3 of the WRPOD prior to endorsement. Materials we've already talked about. Concom order condition. Would like to say that I like the location of the points of access and egress off Fox Hill Drive rather than off Route 1. I think we have enough points of access off Route 1. I think that's going to be a positive for traffic safety. And that's it for my comments.
Okay. All right.
And if I just may, real quick, all those comments are easily addressable. With the confusion on the square footages at the beginning of the project, we excluded some of the floor area for the load. So we'll confirm that it's a 40,100 and change times 3. It'll be a straight gross floor area for all the calculations.
Okay. Joe?
Thank you. Highland Development Ventures is the sole applicant here, is that correct?
That's correct.
You don't have any joint venture here with the Davis Company or any other company?
I do, and at some point we'll form an entity that'll purchase the property, but as a developer, I'll bring it through approvals, and then we'll form a joint venture purchase it together.
Okay, so at a later time, a later date, the Davis Company may be an owner of this building?
They will be, they've committed.
Okay.
They've given me money in it.
Okay. I didn't see anybody pass in any abutter cards. Did you pass in the abutter cards already?
No, we send them.
What? Oh, you sent them in?
They don't need to,
Oh, they don't?
just
Okay.
subdivision.
The site plan fee, my understanding is that you paid a fee of $4,900 and $500, $250 for each special permit. How was that calculated? Because I don't calculate the site plan fee as $4,900. Do you remember how you did it?
I believe I think jogging my memory, Joe, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we did confer on this when he came in and we calculated out the fee.
Okay. Here's how I calculated it, and maybe I'm wrong here, but
It's not gonna be less.
yeah, you can rest assured. I don't make an issue out of it unless I didn't think it was more. So, site plan fee from 0 square feet to 2,000 square feet is $500. From 2,001 square feet to 5,000 square feet is $1,000, and this is cumulative. From 5,001 to 10,000 square feet is $2,000. Then from 10,001 square feet to 50,000 square feet is, I calculated as $3,999.90, which is 10 cents per square foot, 39,999 square feet. And finally, for 50,001 square feet to 102,522 square feet, which is the maximum for the project, I calculated as $26.05, which is 52,521 square feet times a nickel. So that comes to a total of $10,125.95. And you paid $4,900. Is that what my understanding is? So you owe us $5,225.95 by my calculation, unless
We will check that, and if we owe more money, we will pay.
Okay. Cash? All right, thank you. even if it's calculated just on the footprint, you still owe, but I calculated on the entire square footage. I have a total of $10,125.95. All right, the total, okay. The total area of the project is 129,621, so 15% of that is to be impervious according to the regulations for Area 3 of the Aquifer Protection District. So maximum allowed under the law, under the bylaw, would be 19,443. So, and that would be for all driveways, buildings, walkways, the whole shebang. You want 45.2%, which I calculate as 58,589 square feet total impervious. 40,120 of that is for the footprint, and subtracting 58,589 from the 40,120 leaves 18,469 for the driveway, parking, etc. Now, if you had to have 121 parking spaces as opposed to the 16, I guess you would not be at 45.2%. You'd be like in the stratosphere somewhere. So that may be an argument for the ZBA in terms of that's their issue, right? So we don't want you to be more impervious. We want you to be as less impervious as possible. So the ZBA is looking at the 121, and the 16 would be reasonable based upon your calculation and feasibility study. So for the money that I'm asking you to pay, I just helped you along on the ZBA.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so as of today, you haven't given the health department a septic plan for this project. That's my understanding.
That's correct, we have not submitted.
But you did file with the Mass DEP an alternate design flow for Title V systems showing a flow from similar facilities.
Correct.
And you proposed 200 gallons per day design flow to the DEP. Then our Board of Health supposedly increased that to 300 gallons per day, which is in compliance with our septic regulations for new construction. And I guess the DEP agreed with that, 300 gallons, plus 4 conditions. And the 4 conditions are no kitchen or food prep for the building, and you're willing to accept?
Yes.
No, a subsurface disposal must comply with Title V of the new construction. Record water, you have to record your water usage for a period of a year and report monthly to DEP and the Board of Health. And then you have to, if there are any changes, you have to get Board of Health or DEP approval. Now, what I found interesting and kind of confusing for me was that you indicated in the development impact statement that the amount of sewage to be generated by this project was 1,000 gallons.
Less
more
than
1,000 gallons per day, unless I read that incorrectly.
I don't have it, I have it here, but basically during the initial development of this, we estimated, we would not have the actual number of units, we did not do the studies. So what we did was we did a very conservative assumption of 1,000 gallons per day.
Okay.
So basically, it was a very conservative, impact that we were listed in that.
Okay. And that was with a 1,500 gallon septic tank?
Yes, 1,500 gallon septic tank is the minimum size allowed by Title V.
Okay.
Can't go any smaller.
Now, why, and I would assume that this must be based on cost, because to me, I would be looking to connect to sewer. There's sewer in the area.
There's no sewer available in the area.
Not
Well,
anywhere near
Hillside Drive has sewer. Ambrosia's has sewer.
Ambrosia.
Ambrosia's are supposedly tied into Walpole sewer by going under Route 1.
That's their service. They ran a service. They had to get special permission. They ran a service all the way under and connected onto the other side of Route 1, but that's not anywhere near them.
It's 1,000 feet away.
Yeah, that's,
1,000 feet's, you know, for cost purposes,
What would that be?
if you're working within Route 1, you're talking hundreds of
Hundreds of
thousands of
thousands of
dollars.
And would that be the same for tying in with Eastern Pearl or the Red Wing across the street where there is sewer, or the
that-
Homewood Suites?
Home 2 Suites pumps, or pipes up to Jason's Path and Eastern Pearl. I don't know if they go up there or if they go up to another one of the side streets.
I think
There's
they-
no main there. They run, Eastern Pearl has a pump service that runs up, so it's
So
nothing,
what-
they can't connect into Eastern Pearl's.
What would it be very expensive for directional drilling under Route 1? So you're basically going with the septic because it's the least costly of everything?
It's the only viable solution. There is no sewer service available at the site.
Okay, now what about the fact that and I looked at the plan that you had on the sheet, it showed, and unless I read it incorrectly, the septic system is under the driveway?
That's correct.
Is it built so that it's load-bearing?
Yes,
What's
the
it-
Title V does have provisions
For that to
for
happen?
construction underneath that, yes.
Is that the same as H20 loading?
Yeah, but basically, the only thing that we have concerned about, we just have the conventional trenches and Schedule 40 pipe. So
Okay.
basically, it's any standard perforated pipe that's under pavement, like any type of drainage system. So common construction practices will be implemented.
Did you address the driveway runoff of oils and gas and de-icing chemicals? Did you?
Address that?
Yeah, is that in the plan, or is that,
I don't remember seeing that comment. Was it from?
it's my comment?
Oh, your comment, okay. No, obviously, there will be, de-icing and the like, within the property. We have a collection system that, will collect and infiltrate. I think a large component is the nitrogen when you have the sodium, sodium chloride, that's gonna put down. So we do have limited area of this. We are collecting it within our drainage system for all the runoff. There's a very small, limited area that's gonna go off-site, probably only the first 10 or 15 feet of the driveway. But long story short, we have to put a comprehensive, snow treatment plan together. We have not done that at that time.
Okay. And have you've listed all the town departments where you need to get permits, but you didn't list, I don't think, the Sewer and Water Commission. And I would think that you would have to go there for not only, and it's minimal use for water sufficiency, but I see that on sheet 9, you're asking for an irrigation system. I don't think you're asking that from us. You would have to ask that from the Sewer and Water Commission, so you would have to go there for that. And you'd have to also know what the fees are. It's very expensive for entering the Walpole water system.
Correct, and we agree. We understand that we will have to go to the Water Sewer Commission.
And you agree that you will have to pay those fees?
We agree we have to pay those fees, yes.
Thank you.
Then obviously, irrigation and the like, that's not a definitive at this time. It'll be a tenant call at the end of the end of the day, but
Okay.
we'll address that appropriately.
Yeah, I guess the Sewer and Water Commission chairman said that you didn't give him an estimate, and he noticed it too when he looked at the system's impact assessment on the development impact statement on page 8. There was no estimate for water demand, but I believe it would be inconsequential. And we already talked about trash for customers and for employees.
Correct, and just to touch base on that, there's no external trash compactor. They're all gonna be the rollout stored within inside the building, so there's no external dumpster.
Okay. And the hours of operation, I heard that this is a 24-hour operation, but then I heard,
No, something you read said 20.
okay,
We'll have the same hours that CubeSmart has, which is, the access is from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. and the office is open 9:30 to 6:30.
okay.
And then I think we're closed on Sunday.
Your plans are very comprehensive. And when I was reading all that small print, the general notes, the general
CYA notes.
grading, and utility plan notes, and the general demo notes, those are all going on the Mylar?
We can't put them on Mylar. If the
They don't-
plan.
Some of them don't even look like they pertain to,
but it's
Some of them, they may not look like it, but there's a roundabout way that may happen. We certainly could provide the full set that we've submitted on Mylar, or if it's the board's prerogative, we could only take certain sheets, you know, site plan, grading, landscaping. We take no issue doing it either way.
I don't know, it's your preference,
You just leave it on, more is better, I mean, you're gonna.
even though some of it does not
Well,
really,
a lot of it will pertain to when building departments.
right.
So it's a little more than the all-encompassing plan that we all have to have the same plan, Board of Health, us, the zoning. I know you have the specs on it, right?
Right.
And,
There's specs about some requirements about contractors to notify, things of that nature. Bowler has some in-house attorneys that, hence 5,000 words on a page.
And you
Yeah.
ha- So you have to give us some title blocks then for signature?
Signature, this certainly we could do
And
that.
the signature block and a title block for what this project is. Thank you.
okay,
Just clarification, under the 12.3C7, the removal of soil, loam and gravel, it says the substance removed must be redeposited within 45 days on site. In the end, the final grade has to be 4 feet above the high water mark or higher than the original topographic elevation. I don't know if I missed it when you guys were talking. Are you guys elevating it, or are you putting it back to where?
We will be placing the soil back to maintain greater than 4 feet from, of groundwater separation. We are excavating in this back area some, just to drop the grade down to match finished floors and the like. But the excavation that'll be within the 4 feet is the foundation. We have a 4-foot footing, and then we have a 4-foot foundation wall, 10 to a 12-inch footing, and then we'll have 12 inches of base material. That base material is what we're doing our calculation on, you know, the deepest that we're expecting to dig. But then we're gonna fill all that back up, that's 6 feet plus above the groundwater.
Okay, so in the end, will it be higher than it was originally?
No.
It'll be about the same?
It'll be about the same, it might be a couple feet lower, but we'll be well above the 4 feet.
Okay.
Right now, we're probably about 12 feet to 15 feet to groundwater up in this area here. As you come down, we're more like 6 feet of groundwater, but as you get up to the top of the hill, it's much deeper, and that's really where the deep cuts are of the site, because we're digging into the hill.
Okay. And then I know parking is ZBA, but if you could just clarify this for me too, because I was a little confused with it. So you said 15 spaces were needed at peak. Then you said 16 was double of what you needed. But the traffic report says 77 and 77 out, a total of 154. So
Right.
can you just
Those-
clarify those numbers so I understand?
Okay. So, what we did was in support of why we need 16 spaces. We looked at what they call the ITE parking calculation, which gives you a peak demand. Now, that's when we look at that, they have a categorization of mini warehouse, which is 151, which is use code 151 in all the transportation manuals. When we run the calculations, utilizing their base numbers, based on the number of units that we're proposing, we're coming up with 15 parking spaces being required, or 15 spaces that you can anticipate being utilized during the peak time. So that is based upon the ITE calculations, what we need for parking.
So you're taking the 15 and adding one?
Yeah, we've taken the 15, we're adding one, but in reality, sometimes with what we've experienced, it's really less. But obviously, we want to accommodate what these ITE calculations run by.
Okay.
Those numbers that you mentioned from the traffic report are numbers of trips per day coming in and out of the site. get those numbers so I can. 77 in and out. So yeah, basically what those numbers are in the peak hour, you're looking at 70. Well, I think it was
That was
per
during
day.
the entire day, right?
Yeah, that's over the 14-hour day. You can expect 77 vehicles coming in, 77 coming out.
Okay.
So basically, we're going to get 77 customers a day coming in and out, spread over a 14-hour period, you know, from 6 in the morning to 10 at night or so. So basically, it's not related to the parking demand. The parking demand says, well, out of those 77 16 of them are going to come, or 15 of them are going to come at the same time and need a parking spot. And all of the other 77 will be distributed out throughout the course of the day.
And if you add your 2 employees, is that gonna, do you need 17? No.
That won't be, that part of these include the units, the mini storage, which generally is associated with a business use, you know, such as the office that will be operated by, you know, 2 employees that'll, you know, coordinate the lease agreements and the like. So it incorporates the overall use.
Okay. And then this might be a question more for you, Maggie. You had put in your notes that you weren't asked to observe the on-site soil testing, but when Jack was reading, he said the Board of Health was present. Is
The
that?
Board of Health observes septic. They always have to have somebody there to observe a test pit for septic. We observe for drainage.
So are
And they
you
did
okay
them-
with that, the
They
fact that you
did
weren't
them,
there?
they were done by a licensed soil evaluator, I believe.
Yes, that is correct.
And they do the same sort of soil analysis in most cases, depending on how far into it they go.
So they're certified, they have to,
It's their license
yeah,
on the lot.
okay.
Yes.
Right, and just for a little bit, this site has been studied previously before, you know, the applicants come involved. The data that we have obtained is consistent with all the data that's in the past. So there's a lot of historic data that's available that's all consistent. So we're very comfortable with the findings that we've generated.
And my last question is probably irrelevant, but I have to ask it because you get me wondering. On the cash flow analysis, for 6 years, it's mentioned free rents. What's free rents?
Oh, so, should I?
How do I
Okay,
get
right,
that?
so it must be a plane, it's a me.
So generally, when we open up, occupancy is low. We'll offer the first month free for all the tenants.
Okay.
And then, you know, that kind of, you know, eventually it lessens. And then in the beginning, we have discounts and, you know.
Okay, thank you.
Are you looking for freebie?
No.
Mark? Yeah, in situations like this, it's always great to go after Joe because your questions get taken care of early. Mine are less about the technical side, more about the business side. But first off, on the north side of the building, where it's not, you know, gonna be maintained from a landscaping standpoint to any high degree, but is there any vehicle access to that side of the building? Did the fire chief mention anything about trying to get vehicle access to that non-finished side of the building?
No, that has not been brought up from the fire department. The only comments that we've received back are obviously the ones that are on your record. We will be and have reached out to them as well to talk about us addressing those. I don't believe that's going to be a concern. We do have good access from 3 sides of the building, you know, the rear side and the front, and obviously we do have a straight shot along Route 1. So generally, they do like to see fire apparatus access to 3 sides of the building, which I believe we're doing.
Okay.
We do have access to the rear of the building. We do have a relatively level plateau along the back here. We do have a gate. We have a fence along here to prevent trash from blowing into the wetlands. We coordinated that with the Conservation Commission. There'll be an access gate to go back and forth. And likewise, we will have a double gate in the back over here that you could obviously get to the rear area as well. So there is access, it's not blocked off. And when I say like unmaintained meadow, I'm talking about grass that's knee high.
Yeah, sure.
That's, you know.
Passable.
It's
Yeah.
very passable, yes.
will there be any shipping and receiving happening at the building? Like, let's say someone owns a business and they have some stock coming in and they're not gonna be there, but is that something that you would accept, a truck showing up, dropping off 6, 7 boxes for a tenant and then, on their way, or?
At a facility like this, like some tenants might work it out with management where they will accept packages. It's not
It's not
standard.
part of the lease, it's more of a,
business.
okay, all right.
I mean, at the end of the day, it depends on the facility and the tenant. It would be, odd at this kind of location.
Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to get a feel, because some do, some don't. Some are more tailored toward business. This seems to be more tailored towards a residential and short-term type
Yeah.
thing. And you've done a lot of these?
Yeah, I mean, this will be, well, depending which one happens first, my 11th or 12th.
Okay, so what's your experience with security, when people aren't there, off hours? Is there security issues with a place like this where it's unmanned and you do have such a vast facility with, like CubeSmart, it's right there. CubeSmart, you see what's going on. It's all outside.
No, we generally don't. I mean, of all of our facilities, the only one we've had a break-in is on the west side of Chicago. And,
Right.
and they broke and stole our TV monitors, so the security cameras. So they didn't even go into the units.
Yeah. Okay, great, yeah. Joe handles all the technical stuff. Thank you.
Sarah?
Okay, so the plan that you gave today about the footing excavation, so that area in red, that's the only area that you're going below the 4 feet? Is that?
Will be within 4 feet of the estimated high groundwater, yes.
Yeah, okay,
So, basically it'll be whatever the trench width would be necessary to get our foundations in.
okay, all right. And I would just ask that Maggie be comfortable, notified the actual amount and make sure that that's fine. So I noticed on the plan you reference a geotechnical report
Yes.
and refer the contractor to that report
Yes.
for the fill material?
Yes, what we do is, we generally have that to refer back to, because the geotechnical engineer provides structural recommendations for compaction requirements, fill requirements for foundations, buildings, and the like. So, granted, though we put a lot of detail on our plan as it relates to trench utilities, but once we get into the building, we don't want the contractor to take a spec for backfill on my waterline trench and apply it to the backfill for his foundation. So we refer him back to the geotechnical report that takes care of the structural components of the building.
Okay. I mean, I don't know what the rest of the board thinks, but because this is like a water resource protection area, I would be in favor of, kind of spelling out on the plans, just to ensure that, the wrong kind of fill doesn't get into what you removed within the 4 feet. I don't know. I would like to see that, just to alleviate a mistake of somebody not
I could.
understanding
Put a note on there that, structural fill meeting the geotechnical recommendations shall be placed, any fill within 4 feet of seasonal high groundwater as
Yeah.
shown, approximated on the plan.
Okay.
I could do that just for a little CYA note, just to let you know that it's gonna be clean structural fill, just because we got a fairly large building that's going to go on it.
Okay.
Not to interrupt you, Sarah, but
Yeah.
typically you will have the guy's gotta come out and call the bottom of the hole, correct? Your geotech engineer?
Generally, the geotech engineer will be on site, if.
Not the whole time, he's gonna come in, he's gonna say, oh, yes or no, right?
Yeah, yes or no, hey, I got a pile of material that I dug out, is it good, can I reuse it on the site? They'll come out, take a look at it, sometimes they can say, you know, the material that's out here, it's great sand and gravels. They're gonna say, yeah, it's gonna be fine.
So nothing typically in any construction is gonna go in that hasn't gone through the whole sieve analysis and proctors and all that
Correct.
stuff. So
There's-
he's not gonna
there's
be
a
able
full-
to take crap and just dump it.
Yeah, exactly.
Standard,
They're gonna
okay.
pull samples, run the sieve analysis. They're gonna have a whole gauntlet of quality control out there during construction.
Okay, okay. Okay, and then, this has been talked about before, about the hazardous materials. I noticed, like, some of your sites' website lists, like, prohibited materials and everything like that, but I would just like to see, like, a special condition maybe added to this plan, kind of just specifying, you know, exactly what we're approving and what we're not approving. So you're gonna look into
Yeah,
previous.
what can be stored on site.
Yeah.
There's the sample site, we'll take a look at the MDS sheets and give a list of what is or cannot be stored on the site.
Right,
And we can
okay.
make that definitely part of the record.
Okay. The locus map on the first page, I'm wondering if you can make some improvements and, you know, really identify surrounding streets to help identify exactly where this project is. It's difficult to read, you know, to really locate it.
I think we can take care of that for you.
Okay. And then in regards to the parking, you've kind of talked about this, but so in the back side, the, whatever you're calling north side, can you just go over that so that the tenants would have to get through the gate?
Yes.
So I'm guessing only those people that are on that second floor that can be driven up into those sites have access to that,
No,
or?
all the tenants would have access.
Yeah.
Everybody
there's
would.
Two access, all the tenants will have access. There'll be a key access to gain within the loading area. That same key access will give you access to the gate as well.
Okay,
So there are external units up here.
yeah,
There's also an access to the building at that location as well.
okay, but that's like a big door.
Yes,
Like a
and then
loading
at
door.
At the access point in the front and in the rear, there are elevators by each one, so
Yeah,
conceivably, someone on the first floor might wanna come to the back and drop right down to their unit. You know, people are typically sensitive to the travel distance from their vehicle to the unit.
mhm,
And then we kind of plan these things out, so the larger units where people are moving more things are more convenient, and we put the small units where they travel far. There's a whole kind of theory behind it.
okay, okay. And we haven't seen the fire department comments yet, but I would just, you know, I'd be interested to make sure that they're comfortable with this back area, that they can safely go in and go out and.
Right. I think that the two comments that primarily were applicable to that rear area, one was the access width. I believe he was looking, the fire department was looking for a
20 foot.
or a 20-foot clear width.
Okay,
We had a pitch point here of 16 feet. I just narrowed it down because we have a 16-foot wide gate. So we can coordinate widening that with a minor site plan change, which you won't even notice on a rendering, and, you know, a modified gate configuration to allow him access on that. And likewise, you can demonstrate that he does have appropriate maneuvering capability of, you know, pulling in, backing out, and almost having like a hand or hammerhead. So we do want to talk with him about that, because obviously we know that it's a very sensitive and critical item. I think the threshold that was written was 150 feet to have, you know, a dead end, to have some sort of mechanism for a turnaround. From the dead end spot, you know, before the gate to the loading area here, it's about 135 feet that we have. You know, we're not calling this part of the maneuvering area because we're actually anticipating it being utilized. So it's not necessarily a free and clear area that's a quote-unquote fire lane, no parking. We're designing that area to be utilized as a parking/loading area.
okay. And so how do the vehicles safely go to that loading area and come back? They have to do like the fire truck, go in and back out?
They'll pull in, and obviously knowing that we have, generally that loading area, the vehicles that we anticipate are very smaller. Generally, you get SUVs, you know, 98% of the people that are gonna be utilizing the site are SUVs. So, you know, they can load here. We do have an extra wide, we have 28 feet or so here. they'll be able to have a three-point turn and come out without backing all the way back up.
Okay.
We know there may be some customers parked here, however, we know that the demand, they're gonna have 85% of those spaces are gonna be vacant 85% of the time. So we think there's adequate maneuvering area for that loading zone is, in maneuvering in that back area.
Okay, and you don't need a similar turnaround like you do at the other
Down
site? Yeah, you don't
No.
need that at the top?
No, what we did was, we provided this here because, to provide, some additional space for vehicles that may want to back into this loading area here.
Okay.
So if they have a small U-Haul with a roll-up back, they have the ability to back in. It's a scary thing for the business operations when you have people driving trucks that they're not used to backing into buildings, but we will see that, so we want to give them
Put in
at
a lot
least.
of bollards, too.
And we got a lot of
Okay, yeah.
bollards, yeah. Every building opening, there's a bollard, so some, but we wanted to provide them as much practical maneuvering area as possible, because, not everybody's a truck driver.
Okay, yeah, okay. Okay, and did you, do you identify the owner of that easement? Do you have the drainage
Yes,
easement?
in the front of the easement, that is, well, we didn't identify who it benefits. It's just labeled as a drainage easement that runs back to the early 60s. We did research, not only with DEP, but town records as well. Best we could decipher, it is a drainage easement. There's no entity that it's to the benefit of. It's just, as it's written in the title, it's a drainage easement.
Okay,
We believe that it was a historic drainage ditch that ran along the frontage of the property before Route 1 was actually constructed with real catch basins and drainage systems back in the 60s.
okay.
So we believe that that is the condition there. There may be a pipe, we haven't found any record documents of it, that may run along the front here. So as such, what we've done is we removed all of our work outside of that easement. So we're not proposing any drainage structures, any landscaping, or any grading for that matter. So what we did was we made a very minor modification to address the comment that was in the engineering memo, to get all our work outside of that. Obviously, we're gonna do some lawn, manicuring lawn and the like, but obviously, we're not gonna do anything to be obtrusive to any existing or potential operations for that drainage easement.
Okay, okay. And this one, I think you mentioned it, but I missed it. So the lighting, do you have the hours of the parking lot? What are the hours that the lot will be lit?
Generally, they are during the business operating hours to probably within 1 hour after generally the close of business.
Okay, so I'm sorry, could you repeat that then? What are the
So
operating hours?
The operating hours are 6 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that'll be out,
You have to check, in a lot of facilities, after a certain point, they go to motion sensors.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, we wouldn't, leave the back of the building lit up if no one's there. It might, sometimes they sync it with the gate, so put it on the photo sensor, so people put in their code and then the lights will be on.
Okay. Okay.
And then, but generally after those hours, there will be minimum security lightings for building entrances and the like, just for security
And then-
reasons.
And just off the top of my head, I think the signage, typically they turn off at around 1 o'clock a.m.
Okay.
Unless you wanted it off at a different time.
Okay.
But that, that's all easy to customize.
Okay. I think, check our bylaw. I think there's requirements in our bylaw if you need to go
Okay.
beyond 10 p.m. or something, but you check and we'll check. The freestanding sign, I think that sheet is new for us, or at least new for me today, so that's good. But we also need the location of the sign identified on the plan, like distance from lot line.
Difference from lot lines and the like.
Yeah.
Okay, we could definitely add that. I know we do show it on the site plan. We may not give the
It's
dimensions of
shown,
it.
yeah, but I don't think there's any dimensions. And then, could you just give some information? What is the 150-foot septic buffer?
That is a local conservation regulation.
Okay.
So within there's the Wetlands Protection Act, which is DEP state regulation. But the town Conservation Commission has adopted their own local bylaws, which puts a restriction on septic system locations or septics within 150 feet of the wetland. Or is it the local Board of Health that has that restriction? One of the two.
Okay.
It's either the Board of Health that has the regular restriction or the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
I believe it's the Board of Health that has their local regulation.
Okay, and the other comments have already been addressed. Okay, thank you.
Okay, just a couple, but you just said something. Just to ask you, regarding the gates. So when you come in, there's no gate at the entrance, or is there?
There's no gates. This is all open, free-flowing. The only
Okay.
gate is at this location here. We have a
Okay.
gate with a fenced-off area in the back.
Okay,
So
all right.
it's just that. It's the access to the exterior units that really, provides the necessity to put a gate.
Yeah, just in case
So no
someone.
one could just walk up and start rattling someone's cage. All the other access is, to the building.
Okay, so we wouldn't have
And
any.
there's, these glass overhead doors that lift up.
Yep.
Drive into the building.
Well, when I'm looking at this, and the guys talked about the gates, and maybe I missed it, but I was thinking if there is a gate out there, someone forgets their key or something, they'll stop backing up a little, but it's not that busy on that street.
No.
You can go in, I
If you
understand.
get the key, they're
Yeah, you
locked
can,
here.
no, but I'm saying if it was on the outside.
Right, exactly.
Another question, has nothing to do with what we do, but my curiosity is, do you guys have pallet jacks and that type of stuff for people, or is everybody gonna hump it by hand?
We don't have pallet jacks, because we don't get those kinds of deliveries. We have carts.
Okay, so you do.
They're, like 2 feet wide, the carters are 5 feet wide.
Okay, just curious,
We'll
because
put
I'm,
'em on the first floor and the second floor.
yeah, because I'm looking how far you gotta walk with some of the stuff, and,
Yeah.
okay. The rest of the stuff we've talked about that I had questions on. Before I turn it over to the public, I wanna make sure I get the extension. The extension? Tom?
Sure.
Please?
We'll give you the.
Thank you. All right, so, you got a few things for us, a few things for everybody else. Next opening will be the 21st of February, so that put you guys, get your stuff all together, what we need? Okay, so can I have an extension through the end of February?
Yes.
28th, 29th, it's not leap year, is it?
No.
No, it's-
Okay.
March 31st, just in case.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna do our storm protection. We're gonna have it through March 31st, because we had to come down here last year in a storm.
Okay.
So, you get it through March 31st?
Sure.
Okay. Can I make a motion to allow the applicant extension up through March 31st, 2019?
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And right now, we'll put you on for the 21st of February, and do them before the other one.
Before?
Yeah.
All right, titanium's
Yeah,
at
that-
7:30?
Yeah, do 7:20. Okay, I'll announce that at the end anyway, but we've had issues with extensions and coming here and snow and
So 7:20 and 7:21, right?
7:20, 7:21 for both, yeah, we'll do that at the end. So with that being said, took care of that little business. Anybody in the audience have any questions, comments? Okay. That's why I'm looking your way.
I get my body up.
Can you come over here so we can get you?
I'll come over here. This will warm me up. Members of the board, Miss Kate, Miss Maggie, I don't know all you people. My name is Arthur Cook, and I own the property next door. I think this is a good thing for this lot. It's not gonna interfere with the aquifer, it's clean. Not gonna need a whole bunch of town services. There's gas on Route 1, in fact, there's a hydrant right down here. I think it's a good proposal. I think they'd be good neighbors. I think good tax base, which we need badly. We need some development on Route 1. It's been idle for so long. I think it's a good thing for that corner. Where you don't have to get into the aquifer, the small parking spaces, the 15, 16 spots, whatever you got. It's good, because the less asphalt, the better. So you get the water around. The soil is all sand. You might find a couple stones about this big. You can pour water in as much as you want, it just keeps taking it. I know on weird perk just down at back, it just, as far as the water tables go, I gave Rick Mattson a whole bunch of stuff on water tables. And the water department, they have it all. So that's all I got to say is just, I think it's a good project. It's gonna be good, clean for the town.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Arthur. Anyone else? Okay, that being it, we'll continue the public hearing February 21st at 7:20 and 7:21. Oh, do you have something else, Tom?
No, I
That-
just want to thank your board.
Oh, okay, I didn't know, I didn't want to shut you off.
Happy New Year. Now, do I gotta confirm with Mr. Moraski the exact fee?
Here you go.
Thank you all, thanks, Joe.
Okay.
Jack, I want to commend them because Tom did come in and meet with me before finally the application went through the submission requirements, so I think when that happens, it makes it much more efficient when they come to the public hearing, so.
It was a very professional presentation.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Do you want 5, Joe?
Yes.
What time does Mr. Cook? The old gas station cooks. spring break over, we have a continued public hearing for Rojo Car Wash Site Plan 1810 and Special Permit 1811. That being said, Mr. Glosser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Glosser, Engineering, 46 East Street in East Walpole, and I'm here with John Shelby and Bill Mackey. I'm just going to address some of, or a few of the changes we made to the plan and some of the other documents that were submitted to the board. So I'm just going to read from my notes. First thing was the issue about, or the discussion about the scenic road. So I met Bob LeBlanc out at the site, showed him where the access was going to be, where the right-of-way line was and the edge of pavement. Basically, no trees, no stone wall, and I believe Bob sent a letter to the board basically saying the same, that there's no scenic road. I had a discussion with Luke Parlin, the traffic safety officer, and he wrote a letter, and his concern is public safety, obviously, and water being dragged from the cars as they get washed out into the public way, and creating an icing situation in the winter. And I explained to Luke that by the stormwater management regulations through the Mass DEP, there's very few uses of water that are allowed to get into a storm drain system other than rainfall, which isn't used, but other than rainfall. For instance, putting out a fire. So you can't stop the fire people from putting out a fire with water. Hydrant flushing, irrigation. Those are the types of uses that are sort of separated from the requirement of having to meet the requirement of water quality and water quantity. Car washing is not one of those. Car washing has to meet the stormwater management regulations. So in this case, and in any case actually similar to this, it has to be done through source control, which means that the water that washes those cars cannot leave the building because it cannot get into the stormwater system. So John knows that he's going to own and operate this car wash. The Conservation Commission knows that, and one of their conditions is that the stormwater can't leave the building. And I explained that to Officer Parlin, and he understands that. I said the planning board can put that in as a condition. So that was my discussion with him. We also sent to the board, per their request, some pictures of the hot air dryers that dry the cars, and I think we forwarded those to Luke as well. The signs, we did change that sign so it reads when you're coming out of the car wash, the direction. We added the word exit and got rid of the word and. So I think it's much clearer now. John Shelby checked with the building inspector as far as the LED lighting goes, and the building inspector's response was forwarded to the board. We added a photometric plan based on the one that was generated by the lighting engineer to the plan set. The sewer and water use, so I wrote a memo to the sewer and water, and John attended the sewer and water meeting, and I'm not sure if they forwarded a letter. They forwarded a letter to the planning board. Okay, so they forwarded a letter to you basically saying now that they are okay with the water use, which really is quite low. It's actually similar to, say, a three-bedroom house. We asked the school department, you know, why the kids are picked up, some of them inside the Hilltop Drive condo or apartment in Y Summer let off at the street, and they sent a memo to that effect. So, and then quickly, again, we changed that directional areas to photometric plan, and then there's one change that was done by request for the fire department, or two actually, and that is that in this location here, we've actually gonna strike that now and label that no parking fire lane. And John will have cones across there, so when the car wash is in operation, somebody can't bypass the area where you pay and go get a free car wash. And then the second thing is that the deputy chief noticed that right in here, the rear wheel of the fire truck was crossing over the edge of pavement, so we had to widen that out about 2 or 3 feet to make that work. And that was, that plan was shown to the deputy chief, and I believe he also sent a memo to the board expressing his satisfaction. So the final thing was the discussion we had in regarding some of the work, which is that little bit of pavement to widen the fire, to make that fire lane, and then grading in 2 places. One to sort of, when we're sort of gonna shave off this hill to leave the material on site, which similar to the project that was in front of you is nothing but a pile of sand. We wanna leave it there and grade it off. And then some berming to create the a portion of the detention basin. That work happens in Area 2, and we had a discussion about that. So in response to that, John has hired attorney Phil Mackey. He brought him back from overseas so that Attorney Mackey can address that. So, but before he does, I'd like to thank him for his service for all these years publicly, because I think he deserves it. So,
all right, Phil. Thank you. Evening, Mr. Chairman, Board. Phil Mackey, Mackey & Mackey, 1256 Washington Street, Norwood, Massachusetts, is counsel for and on behalf of the applicant.
Can we, before you go?
Joe, it wouldn't be a return if I didn't have some dead trees to hand out, so.
Oh, good.
I kept it in form.
Joanna was doing the same while you were gone.
Well, the only downside to that is I suspect you're gonna wish that she was here instead of me, so it'll be a new era. And I apologize as I counted, based on my last appearance here, which is about a year ago, so I think I'm a couple of copies short.
Phil, you've always been a couple of copies. And oh, by the way, I want to see the check that you flew back on. They wrote it. What airline?
Give it to Kate, I can share with, I can.
She needs
John
one.
gave it to you.
All right. So at any rate, I was asked by the applicant to review the plans as far as construction within Area 2 versus Area 3. I am not proposing to start all over again, so I'm really not here to address engineering issues and items that I am reasonably sure your board has addressed ad nauseum in the hearings coming up to this evening. Unfortunately, I haven't been here previously, so unlike normally, Jack would send me away with homework and say, come back, and I would know exactly what he wanted. I did watch the tape. I think I've answered most of the questions, and if I didn't, I apologize ahead of time. Certainly not intentional, but watching it on YouTube is not really quite the same as being here and interacting with yourselves. So with that, basically, as I understand it, the 3 items of discussion were the grading of the lot itself that goes into Area 2, a small portion of the detention basin, again, in Area 2, and the expansion of the pavement also in the area too. And I have to say, you gave me some good homework, because I really wanted to say what we did across the street, but that's not relevant today. I believe we can walk through the bylaw, and unfortunately it's a zoning bylaw, so there's no nice, easy, here's the line that says you can do it. We have to connect some dots, and to Jack's point, as I brought up in the last hearing, it's our job to walk you through, it's not your job to figure it out. So hopefully I can shed some light on that. And certainly at the end of this, if, again, I picked this up from the tape, you determine you'd like to send my letter to town council, that's why you have it in writing, not just verbally, so that we're not waiting another 2 weeks before, or it appears now February for your next meeting to give you a letter. So with that, I'd like to just basically walk through this. And we're starting, as far as, again, the bylaw goes, I'm not going engineering-wise, because, again, John Gloss is more than capable of discussing that in far better length than I can. Why are we here, and why are we asking for the relief we are? And in my opinion, your board is authorized to grant, should you deem appropriate, everything that is currently being asked for. Basically, you start off with the fact that there is going to be earthwork done on site. And I provided you the 3 definitions of earth removal, earth filling, and filling, right out of the zoning bylaw. It is absolutely clear that this project falls in one or a combination of those 3 things. So with that, you then go back into section 5D, which is the earth removal special permit section. And I provided you some excerpts of that as well. And again, it's absolutely clear that this is, section 5D is applicable to this project. And that would be in item 1. You go to section, or subsection 3 of 5D, and it basically gives you a list of allowed activities that don't require a special permit under that section. And E says activities as approved as part of any site plan application. So I would submit, once you kind of walk through that, we do have earth filling, and we actually don't have removal, but we have earthwork, falls under 5D, and per the purview or the requirements of the bylaw, we're here in front of you as part of the site plan, and that is an allowed activity. Again, it doesn't in any way, shape, or form obligate you to approve the site plan, but that's why we're here. And I think that is the correct answer to get there. So to go beyond that, because of course, ultimately we're gonna end up in section 12. 5D3 does require that all such work that you review as part of the site plan comply with other sections of bylaw. In this particular case, what we're here to discuss is section 12. So as we have earth removal in section 12, it has to comply with that. So looking at the project as a whole, the one piece that we've applied for a special permit is under 12.3C4. And that's any non-residential use that will render more than 15% impervious effectively. And as part of that, we have to demonstrate that this project will comply with the current stormwater management regulations of Massachusetts. So noting this, it is incumbent upon us to prove to you and your board to agree that this project complies with stormwater management. So that brings us to the detention basin itself. So under the language of the bylaw, stormwater management is not a use. It is an appurtenance. It is something that's being required. There are drainage standards under site plan approval, and there are actually items where it is discussed under section 12. I'm going to hit site plan approval first and then move into section 12. So basically, one of the purposes, let me back up, I would just hit the purposes of section 12, is to protect, preserve, maintain the existing potential groundwater supply within the known aquifers. No one's arguing we're absolutely within that district. And to preserve and protect potential sources of water supply for public health and safety. That's what we're trying to do according to the bylaw under section 12. So having an on-site stormwater recharge that properly treats stormwater and infiltrates the water right back on site is 100% in line with the purposes of Section 12. And so under the drainage standards, which again, we have to comply with to meet site plan, it really basically is, and again, John can talk to the details of this, but if you look at the plan, and I'm sure it's been discussed, they want to infiltrate as much water as possible right where it is. They need to have a properly graded lot to ensure that the water goes where it is intended to go. We have a section about rates of runoff pre and post development. And then it also talks about the actual construction of the detention basin. And it purposely is advocating natural areas, minimal maintenance, minimal man-made structures, all of which we believe the plan shows. Again, we have grading rather than, we could put in $1 million retaining wall and not have to have any grading on the site. But that is absolutely not in conformance with the standards that are actually put forth in the bylaw. It's not what the town is looking for, at least in our opinion. So once we go through that, and that kind of gives us the marching orders of how we're supposed to design the site and how we're supposed to get things done, you then have to get into Section 12. Again, that's actually what we're here to discuss, but unfortunately, you have to kind of go through the connect the dots to get there. So, one of the first things we looked at were prohibited uses. And unfortunately, most of Section 12 is written in the negative. And there's very few things that say, well, you can do something, because that's not what it was intended for. It was intended to regulate our watershed and protect it. And, absolutely, as a resident of Walpole myself, I'm 100% for having a protected water supply. But nonetheless, in the district-wide prohibition, so there's Area 1, 2, 3, 4, and Zone 1, not just Area 2, not Area 3, across the board. You're not allowed to have, under 12.3B1J, the removal of soil, loam, sand, gravel within 4 feet of the high water. You actually were discussing that at the previous hearing, so I'm not going to beat that one to death. However, the second sentence of that same prohibition says excavations for the construction of building foundations, installation of utility works, including but not included or not limited to retention or detention recharge systems or wetlands replication. So, and follows and says shall be exempt from this provision, and do not require a special permit. So the bylaw gets there basically through two negatives, rather than a simple declaration saying that this is okay. So we're not allowed to have it except if it's one of these things, and I would argue that the detention basin, as shown, is a construction of a detention recharge system and should be exempt. And again, taking a bit of a logic step, because it's not written here, but you're allowed to excavate to put in a detention system. In our case, we're actually increasing the amount of fill between high water mark and the bottom of the basin. So it would be counterintuitive to say, well, you can dig deeper, you can erode the water holding capacity of the soil, but you can't add to it. Now, I fully agree, it doesn't say that there. But again, two negatives did get to more or less a positive. And then more specifically, when you look at the prohibited uses in Area 2, the district, in addition to the prohibition, basically talks about land uses resulting in the disposal of any waste material, solid or liquid. Then it goes on to say, and again, two negatives here, not a simple positive, other than domestic sanitary waste, not what we're talking about, or runoff water for on-site recharge, natural soils or natural stone. So again, in the prohibition, it says you can't do it except for these things. And again, I would submit that this detention basin is absolutely a on-site recharge of water for stormwater runoff. So I believe as far as the grading that is required for the detention basin, if you walk through the bylaw, if your board determines that the watershed is protected and it meets all of the other criteria for special permits and site plan review, you have the authority to say, yes, this plan is okay, we can approve the site plan, we can grant the special permit. I'm not saying you have to, but I'm saying you have the authority to do so. So the next item is basically the grading of the entire site. And in this case, as John already mentioned, we're taking a quantity of material from Area 3, where it's effectively mounded, and putting it into Area 2. And unfortunately, once again, we're caught up in the double negatives of the zoning bylaw, not a nice, clear, you can do this. But again, as we've set forth, and I'm not going to go through the entire 5D to get to where we are, your board has, for the same reasons I just gave you, the authority to either approve or deny based on the engineering and safeguards that have already been presented, the site plan or the special permit. So again, section 12, under the same section I just quoted, is prohibiting excessive earth removal. It is absolutely silent on adding earth. And we can call that poor drafting, we can call it bad English, we can call it what you will, but in my opinion, legally constructing section 12, there is nothing prohibiting adding material. And then in section 12(3)(c)(7), that's where your board is actually authorized, and I believe previous case here is applied for the special permit to go below the 4 feet as long as they fill it back in. So there's no, and again, these prohibitions or double negative allowances, if you will, are area irrespective. It doesn't say in area 2 you can do this, in area 3 you can't, or vice versa. In fact, in our situation, you could do it in 3 and 2, because 2 is more restrictive. But those are all uses. I mean, the things we're discussing here are grading and drainage, neither of which is a use. So clearly, the bylaw allows for your board, by way of a special permit and site plan, to determine what, if anything, may be disturbed. And it doesn't matter if it's area 3 or area 2. It really doesn't. It's your call. You know, you could say the whole thing, as far as the impervious coverage, doesn't work. And that's irrespective of what area it is. You have absolutely that right to do it in area 3. You have absolutely that right to do it in area 2. But if, in your opinion, the impervious coverage and the moving of earth under the special permit meet the requirements of watershed protection, meet the requirements of site plan, meet the design requirements, you also have the ability to say, yes, this is something we can vote for. So again, we're talking about the purpose of section 12, and again, it's to protect and maintain what we have for groundwater recharge. And back when we were doing Walpole Park South, as Jack mentioned in the last hearing, I thought I was never going to have to say the word stratified drift recharge area again in my life. I was wrong. So if you look at the definition, what's the difference between area 2 and area 3? It's basically the thickness of stratified drift. If it's greater than 40 feet, it's area 2. If it's less than 40 feet, it's area 3. And so I would argue that implied in this is one of the things your board should be looking at is doing anything to lessen the thickness of whether it's stratified drift, fill, soil, or otherwise. And it's actually up to you to properly supervise that. However, within the bylaw, there's absolutely no converse saying the board should encourage an increase in the capacity, an increase in the fill. It's just, the bylaw is just not written that way. Nonetheless, nowhere in section 12 does it say anywhere categorically is a no build or no touch, with the one exception of, I believe we call it zone 1, because there's zone 1 and then areas 1, 2, 3, 4. and Zone 1 is there are the actual well heads. And so I'm taking those completely out of the discussion. That's, one, the town owns them all, and two, not really germane to what's being discussed tonight. But as far as Area 1, 2, 3, 4, it is absolutely under, I've said this several times, but I would like to emphasize a point. Your purview and your mandate under the bylaw, I'm not going to tell you how to do it, and again, I'm not telling you if this plan does or doesn't meet the criteria, because that's, again, John's presentation over the past. But it is absolutely under your discretion to say, yes, this plan meets design, watershed protection, et cetera. And I won't say they're irrelevant, but as far as the site work itself, Area 2, Area 4, Area 1, again, not talking about the wellheads themselves, they're all pretty much look the same. What is different is uses. And as I mentioned before, Area 2 is more restrictive than Area 3. And basically, if you look at the definition of use, accessory use, principal use, talks about the purpose for which a structure or lot is arranged, a use which is customary, incidental, or subordinate to the principal use, the main or primary purpose for which the structure or lot is designed. Those activities are absolutely regulated amongst the three areas. But those activities aren't grading, they aren't stormwater management, and when we get to it in a minute, they're not driveways. So while you have great discretion and great responsibility, quite frankly, as far as the watershed is concerned, to ensure that everything that goes on around the use, as far as the site's concerned, is designed properly, when the bylaw prohibits uses or allows uses, it's not talking about a driveway or a detention basin or grading. So again, you asked for an opinion, and that's what I am providing at this point. The grading of the site is not a use in and of itself. And again, as we talked about before, grading is allowed district-wide, again, under 12B1J, and unfortunately, it's a double negative. You can't have grading or removal within 4 feet, but you can do a bunch of other things. So, and that's district-wide. It says so in the bylaw, areas 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's no prohibition of it. It's allowed, and it's up to you to determine in this particular case, is this the right use, the right way to formulate the lot or not? And then lastly, the final issue, if you will, that I was asked to give an opinion about is, do you have the authority to approve the driveway as it's shown on the plan where some of the pavement goes into Area 2? As I've already discussed, and in the interest of time, I'm not going to completely reiterate my entire argument. In my opinion, when you look at the bylaw as a whole, there is no reservation of Area 1, 2, 3, or 4 as a no-touch or no-build zone. As I said before, the bylaw does prohibit certain uses. I went through the definitions. Some are helpful, some are not, but nonetheless, driveway is actually a defined term in the zoning bylaw, and I provided it for you there. It's a space located on a lot used for access. That's not a use, that's a space. So I would submit, and we'll talk about what the driveway is made of in a moment here, that driveway as of itself is absolutely nothing that is prohibited in any area. Because it's not a use, it's a space. That's what the zoning bylaw says. And so I don't believe there is a prohibition. If we had to remove earth, then I think it would trigger 12.3B1J, as we've already discussed, and potentially 12.3C7, which is a special permit. But in this particular case, we're not removing anything, we're actually adding. So I don't believe it triggers either of those sections. And again, that leaves us kind of in limbo of a double negative one section, an allowance by special permit for a more intrusive use, or a more intrusive, construction, it's not a use. I tripped myself up there, but, so I think as far as the driveway itself goes, it's allowed, again, should this board decide, based on drainage, based on total impervious coverage, based on the entire lot, if it's something that you feel it belongs on the project, you can approve it. If you don't, then that's a completely different discussion. So then the second piece of this is what's the driveway made of? We're proposing asphalt. Again, I looked in the definitions. Impervious surface, material, structure on, above, below ground that does not allow participation or precipitation or surface water to penetrate into the soil. So clearly, and I apologize for going all the way down to the lowest common denominator in the book, but I tried to keep this discussion on the facts as they present in the zoning book and on the plan, rather than saying, well, we did it somewhere else. So having to do all the homework to build the base to explain why I believe this is okay. We have an impervious surface, and as such, when you look at section, or 12C4, which is the 15% impervious surface special permit, which has been applied for. That section doesn't talk about area 2, area 3, area 4, area 1, doesn't. It's just 15% of the lot, doesn't matter where it is. So again, I would respectfully submit to you that you need to take a look at, or it would be appropriate to take a look at the entire site, and it's over 15%. We're not just talking about whether or not this little piece of driveway is okay. It is whether or not the pavement as proposed, the stormwater as proposed, site-wide, because it's all over 15%, is in compliance with site plan, the standards, the drainage standards, as well as the requirements of section 12, which require no degradation of the water supply and certain other items. So as far as the piece that is in area 2, is it a concern of the board? Absolutely. Is it right to ask questions about why is it there? Yes, it is. But the focus isn't on that little piece of property or that little piece of pavement. The focus should be on the entire site as a whole, because we didn't apply for a special permit for that piece. We applied for greater impervious than 15%. And so I would just bring up as a note that our original plans did not have this piece of driveway on it. This was not anything we asked for. As part of site plan review, the fire department commented on it, and to John's earlier presentation, they want more pavement because one of the wheels was coming off the edge. We have accommodated that. That is unfortunately somewhat stuck into where it can be because we are hard up against the front setback at 50 feet. And there's no provision in the bylaw, and I watched a couple of hearings on TV prior to actually showing up here. If you folks are really looking at rewriting the bylaw, maybe this is something you look at, because if we had the ability to shift the project even 10 feet forward, we probably wouldn't be having this discussion about this piece of pavement, but we don't. So now we're in a catch-22. Fire department wants extra pavement. We didn't particularly want to propose it, but it's there, and it is in area 2. Is it absolutely correct for your board to say, why is it there? 100%. Because if we could do the same thing and not have it there, it would make perfect sense to do so. And no one's arguing that. But in this particular case, we can't, because I can't move the building any further forward, and I can't move the building any further sideways. So it's stuck pretty much where it is. And to Jack's point brought up in the past, with enough money you can do anything. So I will just go on record saying economically I can't do this, or my client can't do this. I'm not actually doing anything. I'm giving you an opinion tonight. So that is a judgment call the board needs to make. If the driveway is, as shown on the plans, in area 2, better for public safety, meets all the guidelines, and the watershed is still protected, I think you have absolutely the authority, should you so choose, to say yes. If it doesn't meet those things, then the alternative is to remove it off the plan, and we can go forward. But again, it was put on there as a direct response to the fire department. And I would submit that respectfully, we don't think that it has a negative impact to either area or the site as a whole. So again, as part of your special permit, if you choose to grant it, or if you choose to grant it with conditions, we believe that this piece of the driveway should be looked at in totality with the rest of the site under the 15%. Because when you look at what you're allowed to grant special permits for, it doesn't say these special permits are only allowed in Area 3. It doesn't say they're only allowed in Area 4. It doesn't say they're not allowed in Area 2. It just says you're allowed to grant a special permit for more than 15%. And that's where the bylaw ends. Could it be clearer? Absolutely. Are there a few contradictory things? Yes. And as I went through, to get to an affirmative answer, you had to string together all of certain sections which have more negatives in them than they should, but that gets you to an affirmative, yes, you can do this. Is it clean? No. And to Jack's point, does it say anywhere in there unequivocally you can do this? No, it's just not the way Section 12 is written. But if you actually construe the bylaw as a whole and read all the wording, I do believe that you have the authority to say yes or no. And again, we've had this discussion more than once. Just because you did something before for another case doesn't mean you have to do it this time. This isn't that kind of board. This isn't that kind of process. But this board has gone down this path with other properties and said yes. So again, I'm not saying that means you have to here. And I'm not even saying, because again, I'm not getting into the engineering specifics, which I know you've gone over again at length with Mr. Glossa, that it does meet them. But to answer the questions, at least as I saw them on the film, and if I missed a few, I apologize, but I did the best I could. You absolutely have the authority to say, yes, we're going to grant site plan, yes, we're going to grant a special permit, if you so choose. And I would submit that as presented, this project does, in fact, meet all the criteria. And so that was a fairly long and convoluted way of getting around, but in summary, I think if you think this is a good project, you absolutely have the legal right to say yes.
Question, or what I'm getting out of this is when you look at Area 2, you don't take the fact that there's a car wash as part of the project, you only look at what's going in Area 2.
Yes. I think if the car wash itself was over there, 100% wrong. Can't do it.
So, and there is no, what you've read, and I've read it too in the past, is there's nothing that says you can't do what you're doing in Area 2.
Correct.
All right, that's the way you're coming from. Now, I don't know if I dozed during it, Phil, but you're talking about the pavement. Are we allowed to do that? I don't see that anything does prohibit you from putting pavement into, though.
Right. There's nothing that prohibits that.
And Mr. Chairman, you understand, right? And I explained this to you, to the board at the first meeting. It's just this, well, I explained to the board at the first meeting that this building and this pavement is really not part of the proposal in front of you. It's only on here because Mass Highway said, if you have any proposals to put any other buildings in the future, make sure you just show them on the plan. So those are not, those are, you know, labeled that they're some future proposal that's not in front of the board. It's just this little piece right in here, actually.
It's also some of the drainage you're doing too, everything else you're doing on the other part, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the drainage, well, I can show you, it's just a little corner of the drainage basin, and then the grading to create that.
All right,
Get rid of the hill and not have to haul all of that sand on site.
So in my own mind, you don't look at it as 2 and 3, and you got a car wash, you gotta look at what you're doing on each zone, okay? One other question, I know no one can answer this. How do you determine where that line is? Maggie, you know? I mean, I've always said if you used a real fine pencil, You get one thing and you use your Sharpie, it's 40 feet.
The width
You're right.
of a pencil line can
Yep.
change, and some of those lines weren't
No, I understand.
drawn by testing. They were
Right,
done
and
by
that's-
the existing
and that's what I'm
geologic maps
saying
that
is-
were available.
We're literally talking about feet, a couple of
No, no.
of feet.
Well,
of
it's-
shift. So the way we do it is we take the zoning map
Yeah.
and we superimpose it on the plan, and we match it up the best we can.
No, I know.
Now, I would look pretty stupid, right, if we did that, came in here, showed you the plan, and then the fire chief said, hey, I need that, and then the next time we came in, it was moved over. So once we do it, that's what we have to live with. But you're right. There's no real 100% exact science of where it's 39 feet deep and where it's 40 feet, 1 inch deep. And there's no real exact science as to exactly by survey, right? There's no set of coordinates that we can.
You know, I
stick
also know
with.
that no one dug a hole in this town to find out where it was. They
That's
just,
right, that's what I'm
No,
saying.
It was
Didn't go out
existing
and do
geologic
borings,
maps
so-
that
I
they
don't
used
think
to
it
come
was
up with
that. I think the crew
Well,
just said
well,
here and here and here. I
In the
remember the
origin,
whole
in the
crew that
original
put that
map
together.
back in the original map back in the
80.
1984 was all hand-drawn, and then when that went to GIS, it was all digitized, and then when that was plotted, the line might be this wide, it could be however wide the plot was, so
Yeah.
it moves.
But it's, we do the best we
No,
can.
I just,
Showing it in the location.
that's my own information. I'm not saying whether you got too little, too less. I'm just asking how you do it, John. You
That's
answered,
how we do it.
that's how you gotta do it. Okay. Since we're on this discussion, I'll have, Sarah, do you have any comments on this? Or
This
questions you wanna ask?
specifically about the,
Yeah, just on
the
this.
line or the whole project?
The whole, no, just on the letter, so we can address that.
No, that's fine, no.
Mark?
No, I'm fine with it. I think it's, you know, Phil, you said, you know, it talks about getting too close to that buffer, going beneath that buffer, but doesn't say anything about adding to it. And I think the reason is because it's common sense. If you're trying to maintain a minimum buffer, adding to it would only be better as long as you're adding with the right material.
Right.
So, I mean,
Certainly that could be a condition.
right, and so it's, to me, it's common
Plans and that.
sense and, you know, it makes sense.
Kate? Joe, you have anything on the
Yeah, I have a
letter?
question.
Of course you do, Joe.
John, did you, when I told you about town council's opinion, did you go and get that
Town council's opinion
on Area 2, Area 3, and all this?
We have that.
You have that, and did you share it with Phil?
I'm not sure that I did. No.
I think basically she's in agreement with everything that Phil said.
That's a first.
I would give it to him and make sure, but it looks it to me. And the only issue is how substantive is the, things that you wanna put in Area 2. And you're talking about a sliver of a fire lane and a sliver of a detention basin.
Yes.
So, as town council has indicated, and I think what you're saying is that it's up for this board to make that decision. And, if it's not a substantive, issue, then, based upon good evidence and the evidence presented, engineering report, et cetera, that we could, approve it. Do you want this? You can peruse it now.
I believe you, Joe.
You have that, John?
I have it right here.
Okay.
Phil can read it tonight before he goes to bed.
She said in 3 paragraphs what you said in 8 pages.
I would prefer to walk through the book step by step than make some leaps of logic and,
But it's good to
T's
keep
uncrossed.
this. This may come in handy in the future.
Okay.
Let me just, the only
No.
thing I would disagree with you on
You had it almost.
so close.
is the, what she also said, what Robin also says is that the plan shows the faint outline of a prop future self-serve car wash building and access thereto A corner of that proposed building and large portion of the access thereto is located in Area 2. It is my further understanding that evaluation of said potential future use is not presently before the planning board as part of an application, and where the proposed future use of a Area 2 portion of the property, as shown on the plan, is not currently before the planning board for consideration, I recommend the plan be amended to remove any depiction of that use and that a decision, if any, by the planning board to grant the requested special permit and site plan approval be explicit as to the uses approved on the property in Area 3 only.
We discussed that before.
Right, we discussed that before, so
And I don't
one of the
argue.
things that we would like,
I actually agree with her.
we would like removed is what John is saying that Mass DOT is asking him to put into the plan. I would agree with this also. I'm not interested in approving anything that is proposed.
I 100% agree. And whether you want to remove it on the plan, or you want to write it as a condition of approval, erasing.
Magic eraser out.
Yeah, she said
Yes.
remove it, remove it.
Well, you never wanna have anything hanging.
No,
I think Katie came up with a great idea. If you have to do something for Mass DOT, then do a separate plan.
that's fine. Again,
So this is the
here we
issue,
go.
and I can't really, I can't
And then
give-
sign our names to it.
That's the problem. So I can't
Yeah.
give them a plan that you didn't sign. I mean, that's not
Yeah, but
really
we can't,
what they asked
we
me to
can't
do.
sign a plan that has it on there. At least that's how I feel.
you could,
We add a
Can we
special
put a
condition?
note on, can
You
we
could
put a
either-
very specific note on?
Yeah, you can put a
there?
note right in the middle that says this
Yeah, I'll
cannot
put
be
it-
used as a car wash.
Big note right
yes,
across.
and that's fine.
That's fine, leave it
We'll
like
put
that.
a big note right across it that, you know, it's not part of the approval, that it's just shown for a possible future thing.
But also, they can't, be per zoning regulations, cannot be used as a car wash. Boom.
And I think I would take that one step further too,
Maybe
to
we should let that
remove
not happen.
all these hookups, the
Serious.
gas line hookup, the stubs, everything that is going to service that particular car wash.
We have no problem putting notes on it. I would actually suggest that it read something along the lines of, this building and pavement are not part of the approval. Any future inclusion of them on site requires a new site plan filing and/or applicable special permits. And we're not trying to get around anything, and Katie, 100% agree, you can't approve that right now. We haven't done the engineering report, we haven't shown you anything other than this might happen someday or something.
And the same applies to the conduits, pipes, lines, and stubs for future gas service, electricity cable service, water service,
I'm pretty
and
sure,
sewer service.
pretty sure it's pages 3, 4, and 5.
I'm exactly gonna show. But one thing, if we do leave the building on, we will move it or make it smaller, so it's not in, there's a little corner of it in area 2. We'll make sure that that's not in area 2.
What's that, the
And
future?
so what you're asking,
Don't care, don't wanna hear it.
That doesn't
10
matter.
past 10.
Doesn't
I
matter.
don't care what happens on something future.
okay,
I wanna go home.
okay, so,
It's hungry.
We will
I
clearly
haven't eaten.
indicate that it's not part of this approval, and that if it ever is built, we have to come back to the board.
okay. So can we just move on into, so do you want me, because these utilities are underpaid, so do you want me to just show those in gray then also, you're saying, those extensions? And not, this one, this hydrant's gonna be here, so the only thing really we're extending is the gas and the sewer.
Just show dead ends, John, that's all.
We do show dead ends.
That's it.
You could put the same type of note that it'll require future.
Okay.
I mean, if they build it all the way out and never use it, that's on them, but you wouldn't want them, if they ever came back, to have to tear up an existing use. But they know, they're willing to put the notes to caveat it that they can't use it for the future building as it is now, so.
To me, I just draw it on there, leave it, someone asks, I like extra pipe. It's not our business, as long as it doesn't
It's
come
all-
off it.
It's all in area 3,
Yep.
it's not in area 2.
Okay, just put the little notes on that too. Okay, all right. Thanks, Phil.
That's all I have.
Okay, I have some comments here. It's from Rob LeBlanc, dated the 10th. Please be advised to review the plans and also done a site visit, and based upon the proposed drawings, there's no impact to public shade or stone walls. So there's no shade trees within the right of way, so there's no stone walls, so therefore, what you're doing, you don't require a scenic road. And from Bill Abbott, Water and Sewer, December 27th. It says you guys met with them regarding the above subject, and regarding the sewer and water issue at the site has been resolved. Additionally, the owner applicant has agreed to mitigate at his own expense should there be any issues with sewer odor. And we have some more here. That's one John read. January 2nd, the Walpole Police Department would ask if the excess water from the vehicles coming out of the car wash would propose a safety hazard. My question would be, in the winter months, causing us to ice over. Traveling on Route 1, I have noticed that there's been issues with ice and potholes. So, you said you talked to Luke?
Right, I talked to Luke, and what I said to him is that there's already a condition from the Conservation Commission that no wash water can leave the building. And if this board...
When'd you talk to him?
Yesterday.
All right, because this came in yesterday. Right. So right now, he has an issue.
Right, but
we need him to...
That's what you're gonna get from him. That's what he told me. He talked to the chief, and that's what you're gonna get. So what I said is, Conservation Commission has that condition, the planning board can put that same condition. He said, that's fine with me, or that's fine with us. So, to satisfy them, a condition that says that no wash water can leave the building, which, as I explained, is mandated by the stormwater management regulations, not the towns, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That wash water cannot commingle with stormwater.
Okay, is there something with stormwater management that says
I
that?
believe so, but I couldn't cite your chapter and verse without looking it up.
You can't do it. You can't take...
Okay, John, no, I'm not, I haven't even yelled at you yet. All I'm saying is give us the law. If Maggie doesn't know exactly where it is,
We can find it.
Okay,
That's
it's right
all.
in the law. I think it's written the way Phil likes them to be written. It gives you the 4 or 5 times when you can use water.
if you give it to us, that's not
Okay,
an issue,
I will.
okay? Conservation, you're given order conditions, and they had said January 2nd, that you guys are given it on October 31st. And from the Board of Appeals, it's not before the zoning board, and just for our info, you have to go there at all? No? Okay. And from the fire department dated, well, we got January 3rd, January 2nd, I'm sorry. Fire department reviewed the plans and application and met with the engineer. Request to work with the applicant with the final hydrant location, and the engineer has provided documentation to the fire department showing our apparatus will traverse the site. We are satisfied with the modifications as shown. Okay, so, that's all, yeah. Which one?
This one. This one, read it.
Okay, that's the comments I have. Do you have anything else to show us before I turn over the rest of the board and the audience? You all set?
That is our presentation.
All right, let's start. Sarah, do you have any questions or comments?
Just a few. The business sign that you have, proposed sign, could you just locate that with the lot lines?
I'll add the dimensions to
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And a question about the keep right sign.
It's just that one, I think.
Is that double-sided, like both sides are gonna have a keep right sign, or?
You know, this,
Might be useful, both sides. That's the blue.
it was just something that, when I was looking at the plan that I added, but when this person is leaving,
Mm-hmm.
and I know there's a double yellow line, but I believe in this island right here,
Uh-huh.
the normal course of action there would be to have the sign with the little island and have the arrow going to the right. So even though it's obvious to me and maybe to you, you know, I'm over by the East Walpole post office, and every once in a while, as I'm going towards the post office, here comes somebody going towards the Sharon Credit Union, even though there's two big signs there, so.
Yeah.
I think it would be appropriate, I think it's to put that sign, so it's just one-sided, it's facing this way.
Okay.
This is an island here, so there's no reason to have that.
Okay.
Just so someone doesn't drive out onto Route 1 going, really what you don't wanna have happen.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and I know we've talked about this ad nauseum, but I'm just wondering if we need additional pavement markings or signs for maybe just an arrow on the pavement. So as you're coming up one, and you need to go left towards those stalls, when you're at that stop sign, what tells the driver? There's an arrow, like, I don't know, can we make an arrow that's turned?
This one?
Yeah, that one's good, but then when you get, I don't know, we need another one turning in,
Facing this way?
yeah.
Would you prefer to have a sign here that just says, just with an arrow to, that this is to the car wash?
Something. And then when you're coming in from Pine Street, so you come in,
I think when you come in from Pine Street, it's gonna be pretty obvious.
so
Just
you're gonna see the signs that, the stalls,
Yeah, there'll be, on these stalls right here, there's
Yeah.
signs above us, enter.
okay,
Here.
okay, so that's fine,
Yeah.
okay. All right, I don't know, just this, that when you're coming up from one, if there's any additional sign or pavement marking, just direct them over. Otherwise, I think the movement is pretty clear with the other signs and arrows, so that's fine. And then I had a comment to remove future structures from the plan, and we're gonna do that with a note, so that's fine. And that's all I have, thank you.
No, I'm good, I'm like it, just like the last time, I think it's as long as the issues are solved, I think it's a great project.
Yeah, my only issue was removing the wording about the future development.
Joe?
I could never get my hands wrapped around this flow, but I've come to accept it. But I do have some possible recommendations. As you come in off of Pine Street, do you think that there should be some type of raised island separating the entrance and the exit? So it sort of forces the people coming in from Pine Street to go right. And do you also think that maybe there should be two signs facing them so that they don't take a left that says "Do not enter"?
Well, yeah, I know, sometimes you put too many signs there.
Well,
I think there could be
there's a song
sign
about
right
that,
here
isn't
just
it?
says, I'm saying it's
Sign,
I'll
sign.
watch straight ahead, I think he wants to.
Don't sing,
Just,
Joe.
just to get them to go.
I bet you he went to Woodstock. Did you?
The
We
thing, and
could
I'm
all
not
sing
trying to-
it. Do you want to sing it?
Who was the name of the
I'm not
group,
trying to
Joe?
be argumentative,
Quick.
Joe, but
Was it the Animals?
No.
Okay, we're getting off track, come on, keep
Tesla,
going.
Tesla redid it.
That's our drainage design, you know, we were trying to get all of the water to this catch basin over here, so if we start making raised islands, it's gonna start pushing the water out into Pine Street.
Sign, no, sign,
I think when you're driving in here, I mean, I think most people here are repeat customers, so
Tesla
there's not
remade it.
very many people who aren't gonna really know where to go.
Can I just, the whole site plan is designed by a car wash factory that specializes in site flow to make sure it's not confusing, it's safe. Because as the owner, I want it to be safe. I don't want an accident on site. And I want them to enter easily, access the wash easily, and exit easily. Because if someone pulls on the lot and is confused, you have the risk of them having a bad experience or the risk of them just leaving. So the sign, the whole flow of the lot was designed through studies that car wash factories and manufacturers have done before. So that's why we're.
As you come in off of Route 1, John, you showed Sarah what was a raised island. Could you show me? I missed that.
No, this is all islands right here.
Right.
This is all landscape islands.
How far, there's a,
Right to where
appears to
right
be
where
a,
that sign is.
there appears to be a very skinny island that separates the people who can go either out of the car wash onto Route 1 or into the vacuum area, and the people who are coming in from Route 1.
Curb?
No, that little line.
I think that's just a painted line.
That's
Is it just a painted
There's
line?
another-
Beyond
so
that
it's-
point, it
It's
is,
an
yeah.
island to where this sign is that says keep right.
Yeah.
Which is facing these people who are leaving.
If that was a skinny
So,
island,
and
that'd
then
be a
it's a
winch.
double yellow line, so I mean, this is pretty much.
See, on the plan that I have in front of me, it's like a double line. So it looks to be like part of the island, raised island.
Well, that's what happens, when you come to an island, right, the line goes like that, the yellow line.
No, this decreases. You wanna come up and? What do you say?
I drew the thing.
Yeah, I know that.
Okay.
See this line here?
Yeah, that's
See
a
how it's
double, it's a double
It's just a
yellow
double
line.
yellow line? It's
Yep.
not part of this?
Nope, it's an island, the island starts right there where the sign is.
Okay, but it looks like it's a continuation. That's why I
No,
questioned.
what happens is that yellow line, when it gets to the island, it splits and it goes like that. Check it out next time you drive around town, that's how it happens when you come to an island.
Well, I'm just looking at the drawing and how the raised blended right in, blended island, blended.
Well, I mean, when we put the sign on, you kind of lose that, where that little curve is coming.
All right, so I got some conditions, and I'm gonna give them to Mr. Charbonneau. And these are conditions that we've been talking about all along, and then you can work with him on solidifying that. There's about 12 here, and some of them are from Maggie's report, so we can get this thing moving.
I'll come in and sit down with you.
What's that, Joe?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, anyone in the audience? Questions, comments? Oh. You want to come on up?
Hi, please, thank you. Good evening. Good evening. My name is Diane Cahalan, and I live on Whiting Avenue, which is about 300 yards off of Pine Street for the proposed site. My neighbor just informed me this evening, I didn't even know this project was underway or being decided on. And earlier this evening, I've realized there's 8 other car washes within 8 miles of where we are tonight. 4 of them are right in Walpole, and I have the addresses and such here. But part of my question for the developers and such is the water gonna be recycled? It's a single unit to drive through, and it's not going to be a self-service car wash, is that correct at this point?
We actually have an answer for you.
Oh, you do? I'm
Yes,
sorry,
you have to
okay.
ask them
All right.
when we talk.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
well-
Okay, that's one question I have.
Well-
Other issues would be about pollution, light pollution, noise pollution, and effects for wildlife in the area. Just down the street, there's a few bogs and a small pond. Across the street, behind the South Walpole area, there's also some conservation property and the high tension wires and stuff. So I was wondering if you're taking these kind of things into consideration. as you move forward.
Okay, so, I know you missed one of the meetings, we covered most of that, but the engineer, Mr. Glossel, could answer those questions for you. Yeah.
So, ma'am, it's self-service, but there's attendance at this location, right? From 1 to 3 attendance. So it's not like one of these ones where you can drive in and there's nobody there and you can just do whatever you want or whatever. So there's somebody always here when it's open. So the way it works is you drive in, your car is pulled through there, it's washed, it's dried, and then it comes out the other end. And as I said, you may have heard, we've already gone in front of the Conservation Commission, right? And a big thing in Massachusetts since 1997 is managing stormwater. And one thing you cannot do is mix this type of water from the washing of the cars with the stormwater outside. So all of the water that washes the car, it's about 18 gallons or so per car, is actually reclaimed and used again. So it's not, we're not sort of buying water from the town of Walpole every time a car goes through there. As far as the light pollution, there's a photometric plan that the board has seen. Basically in Walpole, all of the light has to stay either shine down or towards the site, not away from the site. Noise pollution, again, there are some outdoor vacuums, but they're modern and they're not very loud, and you're not going to hear them from anywhere off site, off the site. As far as wetlands go, you're right, there's some wetlands down the bottom of the hill. So we had those wetlands delineated, put on a plan, filed with the Conservation Commission. I'm sorry you didn't get notified, but apparently you're not close enough. But so the Conservation Commission has issued what's called an order of conditions, which is their approval. And they take into account all of that stuff, wildlife, stormwater, you know, the protection of their interest under the act. So all of that has been done with the Conservation Commission. So I hope I answered your questions. For one?
How frequently is reclaimed water used, and will it ever be changed?
Yes. Well, John's gonna, he owns a few of these and he's gonna run.
Yeah, it's a state-of-the-art reclaim. We believe in recycling the water because it's just better for the environment and it's cost efficient for a business owner. So like you said, no, it's not 100%. It takes a little bit in, but it keeps using it and using it and using it, and then as it discharges, it goes into the sewer, not into the ground at all.
Okay. Anyone else? No? Okay. You'll be able to get all your stuff ready for next time, I assume?
Absolutely.
Okay, plan changes, stuff.
There's a little bit of a conflict there.
The one not doing any work, sure.
I would just like
Are you
to-
speaking on behalf of your client?
Yes.
Oh, okay. And he will speak to his engineer about
I
getting
believe
this
so.
done. Okay, that's how it's going. But we need the plan change and that stuff. We need the, probably in the decision, we'll need that section reference. You gotta dig it up for us, so we do have it. Okay?
So just so we're clear, and I provide what the board wants to close and hopefully vote affirmatively, work with the town planner to draft a decision to include all the conditions, make the changes as discussed this evening.
Yep.
And it should theoretically be a very short presentation.
Theoretically.
So the sanding grade replaces what John had talked about previously. He wanted to do a wall, that's gone. Remember the separation?
He didn't want a wall.
Well, he asked us if
Oh, I wanted a wall.
you want, you're not getting your wall.
Stop. You and somebody else.
All right, so we will keep it, I just want to be clear.
Well, then I'll take all my money and send it in.
Make sure we give you everything properly.
Yep.
Draft
Yes, sir.
decision, changes on the plan, go over the conditions, vote, done.
And we need the, I can't emphasize enough, because if Luke ever, Officer Pollen ever comes at you, if at least say why it was and who, and also who put it, we'll put it on our decision, but on the plan too, it's required by the conservation that you can't, something to that effect.
Pretty sure it's already on there, but I'll double check.
Yeah, we just don't want any, so if anything happens, you just unroll the plan, say, see, here it is, right here.
I'm pretty sure it's already on there, but we'll add it, we'll make sure it's on there, and we'll actually make sure it's on there in bold letters. You know, say three times, maybe four, but it is a requirement. Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Okay.
We'll have the site and put it in.
You know, as Ronnie said, trust but verify, right, John? A lot of engineers, oh, yeah, it's great, yeah, just show it. We don't have an issue with it. Is there something open on the 1st of February? Or whatever that one is?
Doesn't his purchase agreement run out sometime in January?
Yep, January 31.
So can he get on the 17th?
Sure, we have Pinnacle, North Street Scenic, North Street Site Plan, Athletic Fields, and Walpole Housing Partnership.
I'll just ask a simple business question. The guy you're buying from, he's gonna say, oh, sorry.
It's a risk and all I can take.
If they have everything ready, we'll be done in
What's on the
5
7th?
minutes.
Well,
Bristol Brothers. The subdivision, the site plan, and the special permit. Renma.
well, you gotta, well, we're meeting in 2 weeks?
So how can they get us
Okay.
our 14-day?
January 17th.
I think, well,
But how can they
Jack
get us
makes a
plans
great
14
point. I
days
mean,
prior?
can you
Well, they don't have to
argue
be
the
moved.
extension on the
So-
purchase?
On the plans,
Option.
they're not going out to anybody.
No, these are just ads
So
that we
they're
want.
just,
So it's
so
for us.
14 days isn't gonna matter.
Yeah, they're just ads that we've requested. Yeah, they're not making any change, we're the only ones making changes. So we wouldn't need, we don't have to have it reviewed, so, all right.
I say so.
You wanna do 7:15 on January 17th?
Yeah, do we need extension?
7:10.
Okay.
We'll be ready.
All right, we continue January 17th at 7:15. We will be ready.
And 16th, 17th, 7:15.
Turn around. Tell them. Phil said you will be ready.
No
Yeah, we
extension?
have the plans back. To the board Monday, Tuesday.
It doesn't matter.
Well, no, we'd like them just because Maggie's gonna have to look at and make sure everything's there. So we'll have the plans by no later than Tuesday, the, what's that, the 6th? No, 7th, 8th.
Tuesday the 8th.
Tuesday the 8th.
Which?
Tuesday the 8th.
Tuesday the 8th.
Putting a note on
No extension?
No, they're all set.
can't be.
Okay, we're all set with the, no extension. Okay, see you.
Very good, thank you very much.
Good.
And John, I'll be in touch with you,
Yeah, next week.
I'll call you Monday.
Yeah.
Good
early
job,
next
Phil.
week, yeah.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you guys, have a good night.
Phil, you wanna take that one, like the one you got from the town council who agreed with you? Now you got 2 tonight?
Absolutely.
You're just gonna,
Do we have to comment on these other things?
no, they're all notice of intents for houses. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, but Jesus, well, what we, it's under a house, we have no issues with that, right? On the fact that the,
Run. Oh.
it's under bond.
You
Save
Have they even
myself.
done anything with that?
Nothing. Just brought in pipes
You have the
and laid
longest
them
ride.
there.
Who bought it, you know?
Just like the movie.
All set, okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Has anybody bought it yet?
Don't sing sign, sign.